About that time. What is up, people, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, folks around the world? Welcome back to Brews and Baseball, episode 7 of our podcast edition. There's our transition. There are our lovely faces. He's Reese. I'm Owen. We got another great show lined up for you all this evening. Hope you had a good Wednesday. Hope you had a good start to your Thursday. If you're listening to us from an later time zone, later, I don't know, from the future. Obviously, I don't know time zones anymore, really, so I'm just kind of winging it, as I always do. I know, he looks confused, but like, what's going on here, Reese?
Nothing. I'm just really excited, and I'm really just kind of concerned for you. Usually it's my English that falls apart first, but if your English falls apart and you're introducing the beer tonight.
Yeah, I know. So, this is gonna be a tricky one, especially for someone who doesn't know English and or time zones. But folks, we have been, for the first couple weeks of 2023, at least at Brews and Baseball in 2023, we have been spotlighting the usual suspects from Trustworthy Brewing. We have been showcasing different breweries, different beers from those breweries that we really enjoy. Baseball Jimmy, what's up? Thanks for joining us. Just commented on a video. Love to see it. Appreciate your interaction. And before I go any further,
Baseball James.
Before I go any further,
technically Baseball Jimmy.
This
sorry,
is true.
go ahead, sorry.
No, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has interacted with and seen all of our content on the YouTube channel, all the shorts, etc. We really do appreciate all of the support on those. The YouTube shorts have been going crazy. What's up, Frank? Thanks for joining us. Just giving props to our people. Oh, and I don't know if I liked it. Oh, well, unfortunately, Jimmy, I grew up watching Manny and Big Papi, so you're going to have to deal with this all season, especially if they're good. If they suck, then, which I anticipate they're going to do. We're going to get into that today, but I would anticipate they're not going to be great.
Let me make it up to you, buddy, because he might have that jersey on, but at least one of us today did a wander over to your channel and watched all of the hype videos for the New York Yankees, and I enjoyed them. So if y'all haven't seen his hype videos for the Yankees, if you have the stomach to watch them, say if you're a Boston fan or just another fan besides the Yankees, go check it out. Even I was like, yeah, okay. And we'll get into why I was kind of conflicted about it. It was funny, though, because we had the conversation last night about him streaming. And so I popped on around noon today, and I was like, he's not there. I hope everything's okay. And then I was like, oh, he's on Twitch now. Go over to Twitch. We'll check him out. And then I was there for another 15 minutes. And then I was like, oh, dog, he has his baseball tryout at noon. It wasn't him streaming. And so after that, I kind of just...
That was what we talked about yesterday. It's the difference between what was going on at noon Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern time, which was either baseball tryouts or streaming or going over to Twitch, whatever it was. We of course figured out, and we came to the realization, we got Reese to the realization that it wasn't, in fact, actual baseball streamed activities. It was just baseball tryouts. Hope they went well, Jimmy.
Yeah, how'd they go? Yeah. I would say, to answer your question, though, I think my favorite was just this year, because especially with hype videos, I like them to be updated. And we'll talk about, certain aspects of the Yankee team. And also just to highlight Judge, after he was kind of judged in a certain MVP race in a previous year. It's always great to see him highlighted and essentially become the captain of the Yankees. Yeah,
first one since Jeter, which is huge. I don't think that gets talked about enough. People have already kind of known that he's been the face of the Yankees for a few years, especially after the season he had last year. But just all in all, that label is just a label, but it actually carries more weight than you would think. And we'll get into that, of course, like you're saying, Reese, in a little bit. I do want to jump back on the beer, though, because we gotta introduce this one. Yeah. So to introduce today's beer, again, we've been talking about this all year, at least from the start of February, where we have been only drinking beers from one specific brewery. And that time with our friends at Trustworthy has officially come to an end with this beer, this final entry, none other than a peach saison. Now, there's a few different things about this beer we'll get into first, but we've got Amelia's first peach saison. The flavor notes are tropical, tangy, bright, and farmhouse.
I do love to say that just everything else. Yeah, those are flavors. Farmhouse.
You gotta throw a little pizzazz in there, you know.
Well, I think they're going for the farm taste.
Yeah.
So it does inform what we will be expecting. But I'm sorry for interrupting. Please continue, good sir.
No, but what I'm saying is, as a Georgia boy, big peach guy, love me a good peach. This is right up my alley. It's a peach saison, and for those of you who are wondering what a saison is, I'll get to that in a minute. But we've got a 6.3% ABV saison, an ale with peach. We've got a pint and 0.9 fluid ounces. And Reese, you did what I can only describe as the Lord's work in helping us answer, what is a saison? And Reese texted me the following information about a saison, doing the Lord's work.
I thought you were ladling it back to me. I was like, hey.
No. I'm giving you props before I read what you sent me, because I give my credit when credit is due. And credit is most certainly due in this case. So, what is a peach saison, or what is a saison more broadly? Well, a saison is an ale style of beer that originated in southern Belgium, also called farmhouse ale. It's a rustic beer, unlike other styles, that's open to the brewer's interpretation. This is a big one. We'll get to that point later, but open to the brewer's interpretation. Saisons often use wild top fermenting yeast and a variety of local ingredients, including various grains. Refreshing and moderate in alcohol, so a little disappointing for Reese, I'm sure. These brews can range from light to dark, taste malty or hoppy, and are often noted for fruit or spicy characteristics, as well as a low bitterness. Artisanal breweries in Belgium continue to specialize in saison, and it is a popular style among American craft brewers. This particular point that I wanted to spotlight a couple seconds ago, open to interpretation. That has been a theme with Trustworthy for the last 7 weeks, including today, where we're going to get a sort of blended identity as far as beers go. So I'm personally really looking forward to this, because we've talked about some beers needing to be kind of that blended identity feel to it, and some needing to be specifically, you know, what they are in their own lane. Somebody said peach. I did. That is correct. Also known as cake. And Belgium is not a real country. That's a boy. That is a coming out swinging today is young Franklin.
I've got some Belgian friends that might have a problem with that statement.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, waffles, man, they're good.
And French fries. French fries are Belgian, contrary to popular belief. French fries are Belgian.
Somebody messed up on the patent for sure.
Yeah, didn't really think that one through. But all this to say is, I'm excited for this beer. It's a little bit different from what we've had so far, but that's kind of the nature of why we're doing what we're doing with this new iteration of Brews and Baseball. We're trying to get variety. We're trying to get a bigger sample size of beers, and to try to figure out how we craft our ratings and craft our own perceptions, and how it might change if you have, say, a really good... I mean, Helles Lager, I think, is something, Reese, that you were not necessarily expecting, but I think both of us could comfortably say it was one of the top beers that we had. I mean, and it's things like that. It's because you have more takes on same styles of beers. And obviously you love a good IPA. I love a good ale. I love a good, brown, things of that nature. So we have our own preferences, but the more we do and the more we branch out, the more we're likely to get this kind of this mix of taste all at the same time. So I'm just happy to jump into this, and I think we should waste no more time. First and cracking open, I think I said. First and pouring, and then of course, first and sipping.
And quite on set for maximum ASMR at this point, because this is a bottle. We've never cracked open a bottle on this show before, at least not in this iteration. So
quiet on set. Here we go. Mine was thoroughly underwhelming, I gotta say.
Well,
I don't know if
think
it came
the key
across
for
that
me
way.
was I got a bit of a glass at the end, so it was kind of a ding, and I enjoyed that.
That's what that was. Yeah, mine ended up pretty clean. Again, for those who are not familiar, the reason we pour our beers this.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just making sounds with my mouth.
This is not traditionally the way you are, quote unquote, meant to pour a beer. But the reason we do that is because there's a scientific reason behind it, which is effectively this process, these bubbles, this carbonation is going to happen in your stomach or in the glass. Would you rather have it in the stomach where it's going to create more air and take up more space? Or would you rather have it in the glass, let it go away naturally so that you can continue to drink more beer? We at Brews and Baseball now do it this way. As a result, I want to thank Reese for passing over that science. I've generally felt better about being able to have 2 double IPAs at 8.4% ABV and not feel miserable the next day. So
I'm always looking out for you.
Yeah, so I do appreciate that that good stuff. We got the wine glasses. These aren't wine glasses actually, Jimmy, but they're close. They're of that similar shape. These are actually, I mean, it makes sense because we're drinking a saison and these are meant for Belgian ales, these specific glasses. So, but they're good. They're good chalices, as Reese said. Thank you for our beers for this evening. So I think we're in for something.
The old first and pour in here. I was gonna just make a brief comment. Like the people that are really into not foam whatsoever are like the old-fashioned people who adhere to the unwritten rules of baseball, like plunking and no home run trots or nothing like that.
Right. So the anti-fun league is what you're saying.
We tolerate them, but we don't necessarily support them. How does that sound? You are welcome to consume beer however you appreciate it, but we can't actively support them in their decision to not have the foam.
To not have okay. I was about to say it's like which are we taking the strong anti-foam stance, as in we're anti people who are anti-foam, or no, we're more lenient than that, I guess.
No. Yeah, we're very lenient. We would say it's okay, but just know that it's tough for us. We'll let it go, but it'll be tough. We're trying to be good boys.
We are trying to be good boys. Yeah,
I've only heard Americans not liking head-on beer. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. That sounds like an American thing. I was like, well, Dad, you got to pour all the beer you can in there. I need my beer now, instead of, 2 minutes down the line waiting for the foam to go down. Yeah,
well,
sounds very American.
If you're waiting 2 minutes to have beer, you're waiting 2 minutes too long.
Well, I mean, the foam's got to go down.
Yeah, but this is true. We gotta have foam go down. I'm playing onto your bit, but I think this means we need to raise up our glasses to another episode of Brews and Baseball, our final episode featuring Trustworthy.
That's not to say that we won't revisit them again, but this is the last of the to-go containers that they have. And I think I mentioned yesterday that there's a new brown ale out. Mm-hmm. So if you're local, excuse me, I'm parched. I need beer. So if you're in the neighborhood of Burbank, California, go down there and check it out. We have yet to try it. I mean, I'll probably go at some point, maybe this weekend. We'll find out. Depends on how busy of a boy I am. But enough of that. Let's drink. Man, I can't talk. Let's drink. Even then, one more time. Let's drink.
Let's drink.
First and sippin'. Wow. So off of the top, I got the smell first, and I was thinking, wow, this is a cider. But it's not. It's not at all. The one that I would equate this to, I'm not going to mention the specific beer, but there is a blueberry beer that we tried at the latest LA Beer Fest. That kind of gives me this vibes. It's not as sweet as I was anticipating. Because like I said with the smell, it really smelled like a cider. I was thinking that uh, there'd be a lot more sugar. It's almost like bitter even, and it goes against the blurb that we found.
Yeah, it's definitely a smell taste 1-2 punch where the smell is sweet and the taste is a lot more bitter. It tastes more like a beer, even though it doesn't smell necessarily like it. Is it blueberry flavored beer or beer made from blueberries? I don't even know if I had it. I think it's a little bit of both, though. I don't.
It's both.
No, I did have it.
It's,
I would call. Yeah, it's safely between the two. It's hard to describe without actually tasting it. You know.
You definitely get a lot more of the fruit. This one, I don't get as much of the fruit.
Mm-mm.
Like I can taste that there's a tiny bit of peach in there, but I can't say with authority that it's sweet like a Mike's or anything like that.
Are we mentioning bigger beer brands? Because I have one that comes to mind for this one specifically.
Now, if we can compare it and the people can know about it.
I was gonna say it tastes like a peach Blue Moon.
Okay.
That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Maybe I'm just mixing wheat ales together, but it tastes like a peach Blue Moon, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the flavor notes here too, like tropical, tangy, and bright. I'm not getting a lot of that. Maybe it's the batch.
Yeah, I'm getting tangy, if that. But not a lot of.
It's like I need to continue going down this road here.
Yeah.
As you can tell, this is a beer that we don't have all the time.
Right. We're not saison frequent. We don't frequent the saison beers. I'm forgetting how to put that properly, but we don't drink a lot of different types of like fruit oriented beers, to put it that way. It's not a ton of like there's like this beer is fruit based. We had one, obviously the one you're talking about from the beer fest, but it's not something we do a lot. And so I guess that's the one thing that's, I guess it's outside of our typical range of beers. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means the rating might be more all over the place on this one than with other beers, because we don't have a huge frame of reference. The frame of reference will have to go back to, do you like this beer? And long story short, I like it. I mean, I think it's good. It's
yeah.
Does it wow me? No, but it's, you know, I would drink this at a bar. I'd be fine drinking it. I wouldn't probably order, you know, a pitcher of it, but I'd drink it.
I think, I mean, I'm going to continue this with all of the stuff from Trustworthy, it feels like, because I can no longer speak. But I think this would be a perfect transition for some people who are more into the fruitier of beverages. I would say, like, say a certain someone in my life is more of a Secco fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I were to get her to try a beer, this would be the one.
Yeah.
In order to kind of bridge the gap. She loves peach. She loves mango, sorry. Not manga. That's a different thing.
Yeah. Manga is slightly different from mango.
Whiff.
No, but you're right. I think this would be another good intro beer. We've had a few of these, but this I think is the one that, to me, is very much a introductory beer as far as getting someone to switch over from, you know, someone who might like ciders or seltzers or things that don't have the kind of the bitterness of beer.
Yeah.
So
seltzer, that's another good one.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, seltzer is becoming more and more popular. I think, yeah, that's definitely I think that's even a better comparison, I think, than Secco would be.
Mm-hmm.
Say if you're a White Claw person or something of that sort, I don't think this is too far of a stretch for you to be introduced to beer.
Right.
Not only that, I think I'm looking at the flavor notes again. I don't know what's bringing me back here. Is peach a tropical fruit?
Not necessarily. It doesn't get lumped with tropical fruits usually, but
because I thought it was a stone fruit. You know, it's got a big old pit in the middle.
Yeah, it's more of a stone fruit than a tropical fruit. So I'm not really
getting.
The
reason I'm bringing this up is we're getting some tangy stuff in there. Instead of bright, I would probably say light. because the intensity is very light and it doesn't invoke a brightness
Right.
in a way. But I will say, nailed it with the farmhouse. Whenever I drink this, I feel like I'm sitting kind of in a rural area, just had a hard day at work, maybe sitting with me, Ma, out on the porch, kicking back. We're probably listening to baseball on the radio. She's in a rocking chair. I'm kind of pacing back and forth, waiting for the banks to call. But
Something along those
that one
lines.
was
Yeah.
good.
I mean, this is a kind of beer you could imagine. I mean, it wouldn't be one that I would jump at, but you would imagine drinking on a hot day in the Atlanta area. Like if I were to go outside on my parents' patio at the house I grew up in, I would go and have a beer like this. It's it's a beer for warm weather for sure, and thankfully it's starting to heat up in LA. I mean, I saw the sun today, which was wild, considering how
the sun
hard.
is still out. It's 7:30 p.m.
That's true. It was dumping rain all day yesterday here in LA, so it was nice to see the sun today. But thankfully the weather's starting to warm up, which means more beers like this. Hopefully, I mean, cold beer and hot days just in general is good, but I mean, I think a beer that's lighter, I guess, in the flavor profiles like this one is just a good one to have for days like that. As far as the rating,
definitely a winner.
Yeah, as far as the rating reads, I was just gonna say, I think it kind of does itself almost. I mean, out of 64 peaches, I think
63, you mean?
It's 6.3. I thought it was 6.4. 6.3. 63 peaches.
63
peaches. Yeah.
63 Georgia peaches.
Yeah, I got one of them Georgia peaches back here. Thick.
Somebody needs to write a song about the 98 Braves.
Oh, man, if only someone... I remember sitting at that house. Oh, okay.
I'll tell you what. I could be listening to 98 Braves while drinking this.
I would be listening to 98 Braves while watching this. I want to listen to 98 Braves later because it's a song about the 1998 Atlanta Braves who won a hunt. I want to make this point clear. So I've seen this trend on TikTok where people are taking 98 Braves by Morgan Wallen, this is the song we're talking about, and putting clips from their team that was a good team but didn't win the championship. Like I'm getting I'm seeing a lot of the 2022 Mets, a lot of the 2022 Phillies, like the 2015 Texas Rangers or Blue Jays or stuff like that. And every time I see one, I kind of die on the inside because I'm like, guys, this song is not about your team that was, good for a couple seasons. We're talking about the 1998 Atlanta Braves who won 106 games, but the context of that is what I'm getting at, because they didn't just win 106 games one year. They won 106 games in the middle of a 14-year stretch. 14 years in a row of winning the division. Now, granted, the division was garbage because it featured the Mets, Phillies, Marlins, and Expos/Nationals, but that's a lot of winning in a row in that division. I mean, we had Hall of Famer upon Hall of Famer upon Hall of Famer. Every player that's name dropped in that song, the big three pitchers, Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, they don't get name dropped specifically, but they're known as the big three pitchers for the Braves in the 90s. And both Joneses, Andrew Jones not yet in the Hall, Chipper Jones, of course, first ballot Hall of Famer. So whenever I see another team like that, I'm like, great, I get it. Your team was good that year, but this song is about a team that was in the middle of sustained greatness for 14 years. And that team specifically won 107 games. I have seen one such TikTok with this trend that has had a team even come close to that. And that was the 2021 Giants, who won 107 games. So that point's well taken, but they also had a losing record in 2022. So soapbox rant done. Let's get into our ratings. Let's get into actual baseball as a good segue into this podcast episode. And that and the WBC.
One last little hot take and then I'm there. At least you have a good song. We as the Mariners have My Oh My by Macklemore, and I'm not going to talk about it. So let's get into the ratings.
There he is.
Nothing against the man, but God, everybody was hyping that song when it came out for all the while, and I was just like, I think it's okay.
Well, I'll say this: Morgan Wallen is a highly problematic dude. He's done some very, very problematic stuff in his life in the last few years specifically, but he's done some very problematic stuff. That said, the song hits. His new album has been hitting. I've been listening to it a lot. It's kind of it. I was talking about this with one of our roommates. It gives me very much like, I mean, obviously he's not as well connected, but and as prevalent in just music in general and pop culture, but it's very Kanye-esque, where it's like he's doing what he's doing musically, and then he'll open his mouth or do something really stupid, and it's just like, please, oh, no, please don't, please, no.
Welcome to country music. Just welcome to
just society,
just the general stuff.
Yeah,
that's it.
Anyways, I won't get into that too much, but
let's rate things quickly.
Yeah, I think Reese, I think I'm gonna go out of 63 Georgia peaches. Out of 63 Georgia peaches, I'm gonna go with 47 out of 63, because the more I drink it, the more I realize it's a lot like a Blue Moon. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I don't get a lot of blended identities. It kind of has an identity. It's very wheat ale-y of a beer. So it doesn't deliver on that, I guess. I mean, this is not specifically from Trustworthy, the little blurb that you sent to me. It's not from Trustworthy, but I feel like at least it was worth mentioning. So I'd give it 47. It could get better over the course of the episode, but we'll see. It's a tough one to rate, again, because we don't have a frame of reference for saisons. We don't know what a good one is, what a bad one is. So it's kind of hard. So over to you with your rating. 47 out of 63 is my final, or my initial.
Yeah. I got to be harsh on this because I'll be honest, wheat ales are definitely not my favorite type of beer. I'm going to go with a 4.
A 4 out of 63? Or 40?
Oh, 40.
40.
Yeah,
okay.
I was thinking 6 point. Yeah, 6.
Yeah, no, we're going big numbers. 40. Big numbers.
Big numbers. 40. Yeah.
40.
Look, is it a good beer? Yes. Is it my favorite? No. I think there's a little bit left to be desired in terms of I wanted more peach. I think that's just kind of what I expect from the beers, like the blueberry beer that we tried, or any other type of fruity stuff like that. Or fruit beers, I should say. And it doesn't really fit with the flavor profiles. I mean, obviously the farmhouse, right on the money, but tropical and tangy. I mean, tangy, not really. Mostly what I taste is the wheat with a little bit of peach. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier.
Some people might really like this. Like, you love Blue Moons. I'm not a huge Blue Moon guy. Like, if you offered me a Blue Moon, I'd be like, do you have alcohol?
Look, I'm not a huge Blue Moon guy either, but I can appreciate the value of it in certain scenarios. It's kind of like a role player on any championship team. Like every championship team needs a good role player. I think there's a time and a place for it potentially, but it's not my, I don't necessarily love it. So yeah, but it's like I was saying, it's like a peach. It's like a peach Blue Moon.
Good beer. I'm still drinking it. Yeah,
right, exactly.
I'm still drinking it.
We haven't stopped drinking it.
If I stop drinking it, that's a problem.
Yes.
And I have not done that with any of the Trustworthy ones, and I doubt I ever will, because this is the last one potentially. And I think if we get back on the brown ale and there are a couple other selections that are available on tap, that maybe someday around we can get them in growlers.
That would be a fun one.
And take them back.
Yeah. And that
way...
I'm
going to look into that.
Yeah, that way our whole house can enjoy it.
And that way, well, and also we got to figure out how to store it in the fridge.
That too, yes.
I don't know. We can talk about it. Hey, potentially not the last week of Trustworthy. We can maybe make this happen. I'll have to go online or maybe talk to somebody that works there. But in terms of the to-go cans, this is the last one. So maybe if we can swangle it together, get a growler, and go from there.
Little swangle, make sure we can do it.
Let's get into the old baseball.
Yep, baseball time. So as we are recording this, streaming this, etc., as we're discussing this, the Dominican Republic has officially been eliminated from the World Baseball Classic. The pre-tournament favorites, or one of the three pre-tournament favorites, along with the United States and Japan, has officially been eliminated from the WBC. It's a really, really tough scene because of how good that lineup is. Ultimately, it fell to just poor pitching performances from some of their guys, and Manny Machado had a horrible game today. He grounded into a double play. I think he was 0 for 3 at least, if not 0 for 4. Didn't have a good day. Julio Rodriguez didn't have a great day, but he made up for it with a bit of clutch hitting where he needed to. Very up and down day. Juan Soto hit one to the moon and was unplayable, but he was about the only one. Devers had a really tough day. Chris Guccione behind the plate, the umpire, had a horrendous strike zone, just nowhere near good enough for the major league level. I mean, he was all over the place. I hope he takes this as his opportunity to get better, basically. He needs to improve. I mean, his strike zone was... I mean, yes, calling balls and strikes is hard. I will acknowledge that. But he's paid to do this professionally at the highest level. I think the standards should be a little higher, but that said, it's hard. He was just all over the place and not a great not a great look for him. So, but that said, kudos to Puerto Rico. They played their butts off. They played the game they needed to make it to the next round. I think they're gonna end up playing. I don't know who they're playing off the top of my head. I think they're playing. I think they're gonna play the winner of
Team Israel.
No, they're going to play the winner of the group with the U.S. So they're going to play, it looks like Mexico or the U.S. I mean, it depends on what happens in this game. So the USA are playing Colombia right now. It's no score in the bottom of the second, 2-1 for Mariaga, who just took a walk. The bases are loaded for Colombia with just one out in the bottom of the second. So we'll keep an eye on that game as we record Brews and Baseball, episode 7 of our podcast edition. We were talking about this earlier, Reese. I know you haven't watched enough of the WBC to, at least compared to as much as I've watched, which I haven't watched as much as I've really wanted to. I've watched a little bit here and there. I've been up late on some days when some of the games across the pond are going on. Japan play Italy at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, so I think I'll be up to go to the gym probably by the end of that game. Japan was both of our pre-tournament picks to win the whole thing, and I stand by that. They have looked absolutely dominant. Shohei Ohtani is doing Shohei Ohtani things. Roki Sasaki pitched 3 2/3 in the pool. And of those 8 outs he recorded, Reese, 3 2/3 innings, 8 outs. How many of those do you think were strikeouts?
I'm going to say 6.
No. 8. He got 8 outs in the World Baseball Classic. All of them were strikeouts. Granted, this is a pool that Japan was expected to win kind of no problem. Really, really easily. No chance for anyone else to win this pool. But still, I mean, it's absurd for someone playing at this level to have that many strikeouts. The dude is 21 years old, throwing absolute diesel. He's throwing cheese just straight out the hand, 102 plus easy. I mean, the dude is going to be a problem in Major League Baseball in the next, 3 to 4 years. It's just a question of when he wants to come to the U.S. I mean, it's absolutely filthy watching him pitch.
Well, and there was that kid from Nicaragua, too, that struck out some pretty big MLB hitters. For the life of me, I can't remember his name or the people he struck out. Juan Soto was one of them. Which one is Juan Soto on again? It's just so I
Dominican
don't mix
Republic.
It up and sound. DR. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. It was something like Eugenio Suarez, or not Suarez because he's on Venezuela, but Juan Soto and I think 3 other people struck him out in one inning, if not back to back to back to back. Or I guess more than one inning because it's 4 outs, but you get what I mean. Tiger Scout was in the stands and he offered him a contract and he got picked up. Too bad he went to the Tigers, but hey, MLB contract, baby. MLB contract.
Yeah, he has a contract as a result of a masterful performance. And I know, Reese, you and I are big soccer fans. I know you haven't watched as much in the last couple of years, especially because of the Super League and that whole proposal. But historically, we've seen players that have really big international tournaments end up with big paychecks, big paydays. Enzo Fernandez for Argentina is kind of the prime example of that right now. Dude had a fantastic World Cup for Argentina and ended up getting a $100 million transfer to Chelsea. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a lot. He's getting paid a lot of money, big transfer fee, which his agent and he and his team are going to get a part of for sure. So having a big tournament like this, I think, is obviously you get to show what you're made of on the world stage, but ultimately having more of these is going to be beneficial for a lot of these players in the long run, because you get to showcase your abilities, at least if not, to sign with a major league club immediately, to sign with one in the not too distant future. I remember 2017 hearing rumors about a player in Japan who was kind of like the Japanese Babe Ruth. He was not on the World Baseball Classic roster for Japan in 2017, and I think you can probably figure out who this person is. That was Shohei Ohtani. He was dealing with an injury at that time, so he wasn't playing in the World Baseball Classic in 2017. Of course, a year later, signs with the Angels, and now has become one of the faces of baseball. It's kind of absurd to put all of this in context. So all this to say, Japan, very, very good at baseball. Very, very, very good at baseball.
Totally.
As far as... sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You're good.
I was just going to say, as far as the rest of the tournament, Reese, it's lived up to the hype and then some. I think the U.S. and Mexico game a couple nights ago, that was one of the only games so far in this tournament where I've been like, yeah, the USA is as thoroughly disappointing as it gets. I expected more from the U.S. in that game, but the one thing it's a pain in the butt about the World Baseball Classic, but pitch limits are a thing in the WBC, and I forgot that they were before the tournament started, at least by round. So in the pool play round, so this initial stage of the tournament, pitchers aren't allowed to throw more than 65 pitches. So you're obviously allowed to throw more than that if you're in the middle of an AB, like you don't hit 65 and then get pulled immediately. It's more so like if you can't start a new AB if you're above or at 65. And that number goes up by each stage, because I get it. We're trying to protect pitchers who haven't been able to really get their arms stretched out for through spring training. So it makes sense. But on the other hand, I mean, if you really want to have an international tournament like in soccer, like in I don't even know if basketball has like a World Cup-esque tournament. But if you want to have a big global tournament like they do in soccer, then that's the way to do it. You do it in the middle of the off season, or right after the season's over. The only problem is baseball is a game where you play so many games throughout a season. Pitchers' arms are shot by the time they get to the postseason, and then they have to find that little bit extra. And so, the between scheduling and logistics, it just doesn't always make sense. But it's still something that I don't particularly love.
Right. I think this is one of those rules where it's a little overstepping. I think people can make the argument about that with the pitch clock, but look, MLB isn't going to take down their ad breaks or lessen them in any way, because they feel that they need to make all of that money to offer all of the big contracts, to keep all of the big players around, what have you. But that's one I've come to terms with. The 65 pitches is a little egregious.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
But I get it. You got to protect your players, and also you're facing people from other leagues, and especially, the big leagues,
Exactly.
But I really enjoy the WBC. What I think this could become, another thing that I don't like about it's during spring training. I don't think that should have happened. Because it takes away from spring training in a way to get reps in the league that you're going to play. And especially for kids who are just looking to track pitches, or pitchers who might not have had the best of years last year, trying to work some kinks out in their delivery or what have you. So I think it puts not only the players at a disadvantage, but the fans also. Say you pick up a huge free agent. This is not a good example, but say Juan Soto, if he signed in the offseason for the Padres, and you're a Padres fan wanting to go to spring training, you're like, wow, I get to see Juan Soto at spring training and the tickets aren't egregious and I don't have to drive to Petco and all that kind of stuff. And then he's like, no, I'm going to play for the WBC. And then it's kind of like, all right, I guess I'll make do with Cronenworth, like that kind of stuff.
Hey, don't hit on the Cron
Not
zone.
that Cronenworth is bad, but, compared to Soto.
Right. He's not Juan Soto.
What I think this could become, and if the baseball establishment as a whole were smart about this, they would make the World Baseball Classic similar to the winter leagues back in the old days when players in the offseason, they didn't make enough money to supplement their salaries, and particularly Negro League players in their offseason, as it were. They'd go down to Mexico, they'd go down to the Caribbean, and they'd play during the winter. Why not have the World Baseball Classic kind of take that shape to kind of fill the void in the winter for baseball? Because look, you play in Mexico, it's going to be warmer. Play in the Caribbean, it's going to be warmer. Say you got to play in Japan, you could go to the Tokyo Dome where it's weather controlled. Things like that. I think they could make it to where it'll work out. That if we were to able to put the WBC at the end of the baseball season for Major League Baseball before spring training starts. Now I can hear the counter arguments already in my head. It's like, oh, but the players need to rest. So it's like, well, a majority of them don't. What is it? 8 teams in the playoffs now with the wild card and the second wild card.
10 teams now, I think, or maybe 10 or 12. Let me think really quickly. 3 divisions. 3 wild cards now. So yeah, no, it's 10 teams. I can do math.
Okay. So look, 10 out of the 30 have that little extra bit. And even then, if you still got some breaks in between there. The World Baseball Classic doesn't last all that long.
Yeah, sorry, it is 12. No, it's 6. Yeah, it's 3 and 3 in both leagues. Sorry, it is 12. It is 12. So, but either way, your point's well taken, and I think it makes a lot of sense to if baseball, the baseball powers that be wanted to have a tournament like the World Cup in that sort of way and not have to infringe upon major seasons, they'd have it in the middle of like November, December. The only problem with that is what I can imagine. I'm obviously all for this, as you can tell, but the only thing that I would say might be an issue would be something along the lines of having to compete with the NFL and the NBA and the other kind of major leagues around the world. That would be the only, I guess, counter argument to that. And I hope that they look over this at some point. I think it's just the allure of the NFL globally is just too big to ignore. That said, I want to see it happen. Like I want this to be more than just once every 6 years. I think the pandemic was a big part in why we didn't have one a couple years ago, and why it just hasn't really happened until now. I think it's usually every 3 or 4 years, but I guess with the pandemic, they had to adjust things as we all do. So that's part of the reason that the timeline got shifted the way it did. But that said, we've still had a really good tournament, and regardless of the rules, and this is, again, you and I were talking about this earlier, the lack of a pitch clock and kind of this is the last iteration of baseball as we know it, at least, in the States. Who knows, maybe the next installation of the next installment of the WBC will have a pitch clock, or maybe it won't. Maybe they won't adopt Major League Baseball's rules. I think they probably will, though. Maybe by then we'll have robotic strike zones and robotic umpires. So that takes the human error away from some of the shenanigans from today, especially for the Dominican fans who felt really, really hard done by, and rightfully so.
Yeah. I'm thinking in terms of the NFL and stuff like that. It's like, as baseball fans, spring training isn't the most highly watched commodity. I think the only reason it kind of still exists in terms of televised and stuff like that is because it's kind of tradition,
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that people are tuning in all over the place to watch the spring training, as opposed to the WBC, where probably, especially internationally, more people are tuning in because they're seeing their stars go up against the best of the best in terms of what the world has to offer.
Yeah.
So,
the WBC,
but I get what you're saying, and I can get where they're coming from on this. Basketball, especially in China, is pretty big, and I know China has a WBC team, and I'm sure it's big in all parts of Asia, and I'm sure all over the world. That's becoming more. I just remember China being one of the big reasons that the NBA has grown the way that it has in the past few years. So that would be, I think, the only thing where I'd be like, but even then, you put the games, even put the games during the day, because it's going to be at the nighttime in the US where you'll probably get the more viewership. And it's during the day, so at least people can watch on television if they can't go to the ballpark. And you see, not a lot of people in some of the games didn't go to the ballpark,
Yeah.
And I think that'll change in time. But I think it could work if they tried.
Yeah.
I think it could work.
No question. It could definitely. There are definitely solutions to this to make it more accessible for a wider swath of the population. But hopefully, if this tournament is anything to go on, we're moving in that direction, and it's not just a fever dream that hardcore baseball fans like you and I kind of have whenever we have stuff like this that's not the regular season. That said, Reese,
yeah,
by the time our friends in podcast form anyways are listening to this episode, we will be officially in the 2-week countdown to the start of the 2023 Major League Baseball season. We are preparing our butts, as it were, for what should be a really, really fun season. I think there's a lot of different storylines, a lot of different ways we could go with this. We're going to break down both leagues, of course, so don't you worry. One episode will cover the National League. This one will cover the American League. And we put together some notes both on both of the different leagues, all the teams, acquisitions, etc. We'll talk through everything for the next kind of 45 minutes or so. We'll go through what we expect from this year. I don't think there's a better place for us to start, unless, of course, you have any last minute thoughts on the WBC or what have you. I was going to say the best place to start.
It's been a great tournament. Maybe the timing and the zhuzhing I think it has nowhere to grow, but from here, as long as they keep it in somewhat of a consistent form and they don't screw it up in some way, I think it's going to be a very, very viable and a very important institution to not only maintain international fans as well as American fans, but introduce new ones.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at countries like Great Britain, Italy, Israel, countries you would never associate enjoying baseball. Enjoying a baseball! I'm a team of Italy. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, we're in a good place. I think the game of baseball is in a good place. It's just a question of, can Major League Baseball in 2023 pick up where the WBC has kind of started us off, and it started us off in a very strong place. Before we get into Major League Baseball, though, I want to just set up the rest of the knockout round for everyone else. We've already had one game in the knockout stage of the WBC, so already the one and done winner and go home. Cuba has been the first team to punch their ticket from the quarterfinals to the semifinals, first time since 2006 when they first had this tournament. The next matchups we will have in this tournament, we still have the U.S. and Colombia vying for that last spot. Mexico is pretty much all but guaranteed. If the U.S. wins, they're in. If Colombia wins, there are some scenarios where the U.S. will still go through, but the U.S. has to win today, take care of business. They control their own destiny. They're fine. So the USA and Mexico probably going to go through unless Colombia snatches a win from the U.S. But Captain America Mike Trout has made it 1-0 USA. In the top of the third inning, I think he's going oppo on this. I've got it going. Yeah, just going up the middle / the other way, driving in Mookie Betts. Love to see it. So 1-0 US in the first inning, or sorry, in the
got
first,
out of the bases loaded jam in the second.
Yeah, that was huge. US had the Colombia rather had the bases loaded, and could not score. Now the U.S. is up 1-0 in the top of the third. 2 outs for Paul Goldschmidt. So Mexico,
USA.
Hey.
Why do you think I have this tri-corner hat on? It was mainly because the farmhouse and America, but yeah.
And then you turned into Captain Jack Sparrow. So Cuba and Italy from Pool A. Cuba already played. They're going through. Australia, great story from the start of the tournament, but they unfortunately are going home. Japan with a perfect 4-0 record throughout the pool stage, group stage. They will play Italy again, as I mentioned, at 3 a.m. Pacific time, 6 a.m. Eastern time. I'll probably be up for the end of that game. We'll see what happens. Mexico already gone through. They will play Puerto Rico. And actually, depending on what happens this game, that game is kind of in flux now that I look at it. So the winner of Pool C between the Mexico and the United States will play Puerto Rico, and the winner of Pool D, Venezuela, will play the other one of those two teams between Mexico and the U.S. So we could have some really, really good matchups to start off the quarterfinals and to punch those 3 other tickets next to the Cuban national team. Oh, a lot of WBC coming up in the next couple of days. It's going to be a really, really quick turnaround between today and the end of the tournament next Tuesday, the 21st. But then just 9 days later, that next Thursday, Reese, we play baseball. We play the major leagues.
Major League Baseball.
It's back. Major League Baseball. It's back. It's been too long. A lot of moving pieces in the offseason. I think there's no place that we can really start other than with the, I hate saying this, defending World Series champion Houston Astros. Look, Reese and I are in agreement on this one. Pretty much everyone we know is in agreement on this one. Everyone who has really a brain is in agreement that the Astros winning in 22 was probably the worst possible outcome, not because of what they did in 2017 and 18 and parts of 19, probably parts of 20 and 21.
Probably what every other team was doing.
What everyone else is doing. Yeah. Look, it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth to see the Astros win, because not only are they known for the wrong things in 2017 specifically, but they're just, I don't know, man. They're just a boring club to see. It's just boring to see them win because they're so good, and they're built on the same sort of mechanisms that brought the Red Sox to prominence in 2004 and the early 2000s. The same mechanisms that the Tampa Bay Rays use a lot. It's borderline boring because they're so good. And I think the only piece I will say of note that I mentioned, of course, they lost Yuli Gurriel to the offseason to free agency. He's signing with Miami. And Justin Verlander, he's going to, obviously, the Mets. We'll talk about the Mets in our next episode at some point, either next week or the week after. But there's a lot of kind of consistency with this team. Jeremy Pena won the the ALCS and World Series MVP in the same season. That hasn't happened for a few years, and that's a mark of his really good play this year. Rookie of the year as well. Not Rookie of the Year. Close to Rookie of the Year, if not for Julio Rodriguez of the Mariners, who we'll talk about in length, at depth. But yeah, no, the Astros is just boring. Length, depth, width, all the it's. And THs.
Here's where I can come in then. If it's so boring for you, let me give you a hot take.
What's your hot take, Reese?
It's not that hot. At best, it's very lukewarm. I think they're going to take the AL again. I do not see a more complete team on the AL side. Of course, you could go to the Mets. They've bought a lot of their people. I, of course, kind of point back to the acquisitions that they made in the offseason. If you lose Verlander and Gurriel to pick up Jose Abreu and Trey Mancini, I think you won. Obviously, Verlander, north of 40. He had a great year
40.
last year, a bit of a resurgence, but I think, now was the time to kind of let him go. He was looking for a little bit of a payday, and the Mets were willing to give it to him, so that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Verlander, for 2 championships. Now please get out of my house. But And like I said, they picked up Abreu and Mancini. It's both going to be huge bats for the Astros to even thicken up that lineup as it is.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, they are a good team. However, many of their stars are north of 30. Abreu, Brantley, Maldonado are all 36. They don't have many years left, if more than one, if I'm being honest with you. Altuve is 33. So, how many more years of contention do they got? One of the reasons that the Astros are so successful is not only do they have big acquisitions and all that kind of stuff, but they seem to develop their guys.
Yep.
And the ones that they don't develop as good, they get pretty good returns on if they put them on the market. And we briefly talked about Verlander. They still got McCullers and Valdez, and those guys, when they're on, they are the bestower of nightmares.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, I think they're taking the AL again, as much as I hate that being a Mariners fan. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah,
it's just a tough day at the office.
I'll add as well, when you can slot Luis Garcia in as a number 3 guy, a guy with a sub, a 3.5.
I was wondering who was the third guy.
No, yeah. but you could slot in Luis Garcia with a 3.5 ERA just as a number 3 because you can. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, the dude's got insane stuff. He can't really do the funky little wind up anymore, the little rock the baby to start his motion. But
not enough time.
Still, he's still got great stuff, and that part is going to get worked out sooner than later. There may be an adjustment period early in the season, sure, but he's a professional. He has got a great organization as far as developing his talents. The Astros are doing what you're supposed to do in kind of the sabermetric era. They're drafting well, developing well, making smart moves in free agency. They're doing what you need to do to win ball games, and unfortunately they're doing it better than pretty much any other team in baseball. I'd argue the Dodgers are the only team that kind of develop on the same level as the Astros. I mean, maybe a couple other teams here and there, but I mean, I wouldn't even say the Braves are in that conversation for how well they develop players. And this is the same Braves who had the 1-2 punch for pretty much every Rookie of the Year award in 2022, but eventually the Writers Award went to Michael Harris, which is kind of the one that's accepted as, Rookie of the Year. But it's still just a testament to how well they do, and I hate that we have to give them this much credit, but they frankly have earned it. And
yep,
the other scary thing,
I don't think anybody can hold 2017 over their heads, let alone the fact that every team is cheating in some way.
Correct.
I don't think it's completely outlandish to say that.
Yep.
I think we all just have to come to terms with it. We as a society tend to overreact, especially for something we view as so pure as the game of baseball. But tell me I'm wrong.
No. I'm laughing because you're right. No, I'm laughing.
When something bad happens, we're shocked. We're shocked to the core, and nobody goes back in baseball history and is like, "Oh crap, what we've actually had a lot of problems."
No, I'm laughing because you're right. Because there haven't been instances in baseball where you're like, oh, they're cheating. I never thought that was going to happen in a multi-billion-dollar game. I mean, cheating in baseball. We talked about this before. Cheating in baseball there is integral. They go hand in hand like sunflower seeds. I said stirrups previously, but I meant high socks. I'm gonna come clean on my mistake. Sunflower seeds and high socks specifically.
Yeah. It's one of the things that helps me get to sleep to this day.
Just remembering that little soundbite. But no, baseball teams have been cheating for as long as the game has been around. It's part of the game. It's not ideal. We don't love that it happens, but it's part of the game. It's always been the way the game has been played, unfortunately. So you can't kind of live life by what you want it to be. You kind of have to accept it for what it is and just move forward. And, you don't have to like I'm not saying you have to like the Astros. I'm not saying you have to respect the Astros, at least for doing that. But you have to respect the job they've done to build the organization as far as winning, to build the organization that they have right now. So the other thing I'll say before we go on to the Mariners, Reese, because I want to talk about the Mariners. The Astros lost Justin Verlander to free agency. They also have the second coming of Justin Verlander from their farm system. A guy named Hunter Brown. Look him up if you haven't already. Pitching Ninja did a breakdown on him side by side. It's scary how similar their mechanics look. So, he is
I wonder if he kind of did the Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson kind of approach. If this kid went up to Verlander and Verlander was nice enough to say, yeah, look, I'm at the edge of my career. Take what I've known. Take the sticky stuff combination that I've learned from Garrett Cole. Allegedly.
Or that he gave to Garrett Cole. Allegedly.
That's fair enough. Yeah, it's like I cannot
Cole,
confirm or deny who gave and who received.
Look, Garrett Cole was mid with the Pirates. He goes to the Astros. Justin Verlander was already with the Astros. He goes there, and then all of a sudden Garrett Cole becomes Garrett Cole. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Find out.
And then 2021, they ban sticky stuff. Garrett Cole becomes terrible again. I don't know. I'm just saying. We might be huge conspiracy theorists to anyone listening to this for the very first time.
Yes.
Reese. Seattle.
Seattle time?
Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners. What do you got from Mariners perspective? So let me start here. So I remember this like it was yesterday. We're on our way.
Give me your thoughts.
No.
Give me your thoughts
so
first.
okay. So my thoughts are, as an adopted Seattleite, I'm excited for the Mariners this year. I was excited for the Mariners last year because of how they ended 21. I was like, they are making moves in the right direction. They won more games in 2021 than the World Series champions. So
22.
In 21 as well. 21, they won 89 games. The Braves won 88 games. Yeah, they won more games than the world champions in 2021. In 2022, not quite. The Braves won 100 and 101, so Mariners didn't quite win 101. But
I get what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, so they won more games. They were on an upward trajectory. I was telling you in 2022, early in the year, I was like, I think this could be the year they break the drought. I think that this could. They're moving in the right direction. You did not believe me because you have a habit of not believing me. You didn't believe my blind optimism apparently. But I told you no. I said, Reese, I think they're moving in the right direction. And lo and behold, we're on our way to Oktoberfest over in Venice at one of the local German restaurants. And the Mariners beat the Blue Jays in one of the most incredible come-from-behind wins I think I've ever seen in my entire life. I saw tears flow out of your eyes like I've never seen before. Listen, I could not be happier for you, for Seattle. I'm excited for the year, and I want to hear a Seattleite's perspective on what 2023 has in store.
Okay, well, I'll have to say this, is that in terms of me not believing you, it's not me not believing you. It's just the fact that it's been about since 1989. People have been saying that the Mariners are the future of baseball, and there's only been a couple of times where they've ever even come close to that full potential. Always at the end, they just find a way to just tear our hearts out, whether it's getting ousted by the then Cleveland Indians, now the Guardians. That one was okay. That was like the second team of the 90s, I think, besides the Braves, was that Indians franchise. And then we got knocked out by the Orioles in the 97 ALDS. Not great. And of course, we fell to the evil empire of the New York Yankees in 01, and it's just been perpetual failure year in and year out. U-Tree calls it a legacy of failure. It is quite correct, a legacy of failure. With that being said, this is the first time where I feel that the Mariners have not only spent, because they spent for Robinson Cano, and look at how that went. It was like, even when they signed the deal, I was like, nah, we're screwed. We're so screwed.
I think you and I had just met when they when he signed that deal, and I found out you're a big Mariners fan, and we were talking. That was one of the things we were talking about, and it was just kind of like it kind of spiraled from there after the first year.
And it was just he had one good year where he went to the home run derby and that, but then he fell off. But look, we've spent a lot in this offseason, probably a lot more than I was anticipating. We pick up Colton Wong from the Brewers.
Yep.
Not the Cardinals. I almost said the Cardinals.
Yep.
Teoscar Hernandez from the Blue Jays, still trying to figure out how we swung that. AJ Pollock is a good additional bat. Might have something still left in him. We'll find out. Now, that to me is more effective spending than chunking all of our change for one guy. And also, it's not based completely on sabermetrics. These guys have had legacies of performing. Maybe not to the MVP standards of certain people in this league, but for Mariner standards, please get over here quickly. Because I think the one sort of weakness that we have is that we have some big bats and stuff like that, but we're relying on a lot of young guys to perform like they did last year. Cal Raleigh had a heck of a year. Dylan Moore was great. Sam Haggerty in spurts was fantastic. I still think one of my favorite moments from last year was his inside the park home run in Texas.
That was a lot of fun.
With that being said, we've got some good pieces. I'm not sure if it's enough, especially to go up against Houston. We're going to be playing them a lot. I don't know if it's enough to go against Texas and their new arms that are now in the bullpen. We will also talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
What else are my notes here? All of the team is approaching 30, which means hopefully if we don't get it this year, we have more acquisitions. Maybe in about a year or two, we can really have the team to really make it happen. But after that, that might be it. And it'll be back to the sweet, sweet waters of mediocrity. Us just waiting in our little pool floaties like at the water parks and all that kind of stuff.
Waiting for the wave pool to come by.
Yeah, and look, I think the key this year is that the youngins on the team really have to have the same numbers they were putting up last year. I mentioned Cal Raleigh and Haggerty, Moore, of course, but also pitching. You got Logan Gilbert having a heck of a year. George Kirby also coming out. And the bullpen goes to work. The only people we lost for all the things that we got, we lost Mitch Haniger. Yeah, okay. That's a tough one to take, but look, 260 hitter was kind of a cornerstone of our team the past few years. Sent him to the Giants. To get the returns we got, I'm not upset. We let go of Adam Frazier. I'm perfectly okay with that. He did not perform as expected. Winker also gone. Didn't perform to expectations with us. I'm really excited. But look, like I said, legacy of failure. And it's going to take a lot for me to get over that fact. I haven't even been alive for a majority of it, but my dad has, and he's given up. He's given up for a couple of years now. Even with last year, he's like, they won't do it. First round exit. And I was like, they'll probably get second round. Nah, first round. And so I won that bet, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, well,
I'm very excited, but I'm still so nervous.
Right.
So nervous.
Right. And you have every right to be nervous, of course, with the history that you've endured as a fan of the Seattle Mariners. It's been a really difficult period, especially when it like 01 comes to mind as a year that, what could have been. I mean, they were given the commissioner's award, but ended up, not performing to expectations.
Evil Empire got him.
Right. So it's tough. It's really hard. I get kind of that sentiment, especially growing up watching some of those Braves, like we said, the subject of the 98 Braves, teams being so good only to fall flat so miserably. It's a different emotion, though, but I think a lot of the points you're making, there's a lot of reason for optimism from a Seattle perspective. Yeah,
you bet.
I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to watch the Mariners this year. I think the pieces they gave up, Abraham Toro and Jesse Winker in the Colton Wong trade, I think that was that's fine. I mean, Toro was kind of a fringe starter. He'd start, maybe 60% of the games. Colton Wong is going to be your everyday second baseman, no question. He's played in a World Series before. That's huge experience. Doesn't really get talked about as much. AJ Pollock, I think
ain't been there before.
AJ Pollock has won a World Series with the Dodgers, I'm pretty sure. If not, played in high leverage games in front of a really, rabid, hungry fan base in Los Angeles. Not that the Mariners aren't.
His big postseason was with the Dodgers.
Right, that's true. So he has that experience. Teoscar Hernandez is, he's getting the same experience as some of the young guys as well. So you're adding experience, you're adding proven ability, you're adding leadership, you're adding veterans, you're adding pieces that Seattle needed to become a more complete team. And we know Jerry Dipoto is not afraid to make a deal. So
I love Jerry Dipoto so much. I know that people razzed him a lot in the early parts of his career, but dude, we were trash. We had to start somewhere. I knew when we picked him up from Anaheim that we were in for it, because you see how terrible the Angels are doing. If Artie Moreno would have just left him alone, I think Anaheim could have won World Series with the deep pockets that Moreno's got. And we'll get into the Angels in a little bit, because that is a certain form of hell I wish upon no baseball fan. And there are a couple of teams in this league, almost 3, that are in that same boat. Which gives me more hope, because all we got to really worry about, I think, if my assumptions are correct, is Houston.
Yeah.
And we can get to Texas and all that kind of stuff, which is my fringe worry at this point.
Yeah. I think you nailed it pretty succinctly. I mean, Jerry Dipoto has been known to make a deal or two in his time in Major League Baseball as an executive, as a GM. So again, if the Mariners are right there at the deadline, which I fully expect them to be, I will not be shocked to see them make a move for a frontline starter, pitcher, a starter, a reliever, a big bat, etc. Whoever's available in the market. I mean, you don't know how baseball is going to play out, which is one of the great things about playing 162 games. You just don't know how it's going to play out over the course of a long season. Guys get hurt. Guys kind of have peaks and valleys. It's the question of just managing that and knowing that you have the right people, not just players, but the people involved around the organization. And I think Scott Service is a really, really good baseball guy for that specific job. He knows what he's doing. He has good feel. I think he's not as
he backs his boys too.
Yeah. And he's not aggressively anti sabermetrics like I think some managers might be, but he's, at the end of the day, he's got great feel, which of effectively what you need as a manager. You need to be able to understand analytics, but you also need to be able to stick up to your front office, go to your GM and be like, this is overwhelming my players. Just tell me the short of it. Tell me what I can translate to my players. I'll go talk to them. That's why Alex Cora gets a lot of credit for being a great manager, because he understands the analytics, but he doesn't bog his players down with all of that nonsense. He distills it in a way and communicates it to his coaching staff and to his players in a way that they understand to help them do their job the best, which is what sabermetrics are supposed to do. They're supposed to help you do your job better, not do your job for you, which is, again, why when we talk about the Rays in 2020, this is you and I pre-Brews and Baseball. When we talk about that team and what could have been, that's a case of the front office managing via Kevin Cash, not Kevin Cash managing at the guidance of the front office. That's the front office managing the game. But we'll talk about the Rays in a little bit. This is actually a really good segue. This is a good segue to the Angels. You mentioned what they could have been, and what this entire organization has been over the last 3-4 seasons is a huge case of what could have been, but what ultimately will not be, because Shohei Ohtani will be wearing a different uniform in 2024. He'll be wearing Angels uniform for most of 23, but by the deadline, I don't know, man.
I think the only reason that Shohei would be wearing an Angels jersey past 2024 is if Art Moreno leaves. Because one of the notes that I have here, hold on, let me go to it, because this was probably my favorite note to write. The first note that I have is free Ohtani and Trout. I think that's just the obvious choice. And then the second one is F*** Art Moreno. And one of the main reasons because of this is because here's where things could get especially dicey here in Anaheim. recently Art Moreno negotiated a sweetheart deal for the land around Angel Stadium and Angel Stadium itself. Look at sometime down the line, you realize that the Anaheim government might be a little bit corrupt. Allegedly. They're currently doing a corruption investigation. I think that's going to really bog things down. Artie Moreno will need all the cash that he can to fight this. He won't spend it on his players. He is not going to sell the team. I remember people were saying, hey, you should probably sell the team. And then he was like, you know what? No, I'm going to keep it. And as soon as that happened, I broke several things. Sure, the Angels are a rival for me in the AL West, but as a baseball fan, I'm just so infuriated that the egotistical owners can get in the way of themselves and not allow generational talents, generational Hall of Fame talents, I might add. Shohei, in my eyes, hasn't proven it completely yet. He's had a great year of the two-way, and I'm thinking if he has a couple of those down the line, that's it for me. But it's got to be more than one.
Well, I mean, he's really had two elite two-way years, but you know, I get your point. You want to see more, basically. But yeah, keep going on this tangent. Yeah,
I just don't want him to become a Bo Jackson. That's really all I'm hoping for. I don't think it's going to happen, but with the kerfuffle going on in Anaheim, with the just general stress that can put on a ball club, even though it really has nothing to do with them. If your owner is being indicted or at least being accused of something, people are going to be asking questions. Jobs and situations might be in disarray if one thing goes wrong. And of course, the Angels, the ball club itself, who did they pick up? Brandon Drury, Tyler Anderson? This was the note I wrote for that. I was like, wow, yay, Brandon Drury and Tyler Anderson, welcome to hell. I was like, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of it. That's kind of the note on it. And I'm looking at Mike Trout's contract right now. So Mike Trout is 31 in 2020. His age 31 season in 2023. Every year, including this year, up through 2030, Mike Trout will be making $35.4 million base, a total adjusted salary, including luxury tax, of $37.11 million a year through his age 38 season, including his age 38 season. Now, Mike Trout is a likely first ballot Hall of Famer. If not first, then definitely second or third. But he's going to be in the Hall. He was going to be in the Hall of Fame. Mike Trout is a future Hall of Famer. End of story. But he's making a lot of money for a franchise that doesn't really have a clear direction, doesn't have a manager with experience of taking the reins of a ball club and commanding the respect of each one of his players. Phil Nevin took over as interim manager when Joe Madden was fired. I was about to say Mike Scioscia, but when Joe Madden was fired, Phil Nevin took over as interim manager. And usually when a manager gets fired in sports, specifically, I mean, this happens across the board, but typically when a manager gets fired, there's some sort of bounce, right? The team wins a couple games, might go on a win streak, you know, might start playing a little better. I believe they lost, 12 in a row for him to start his managerial career with the Angels, or it may not have been in a row, but it was bad. It was really.
And he's coming back next year,
really,
baby.
Exactly, and that's my point. So this organization is not one that went out and got like a Bruce Bochy, for example, to steer the ship.
I was going to write that note down for Texas.
And
that's
our segue
Bochy.
Into the Rangers. But I want to finish this point on the Angels.
Yeah, please.
I've had this thought since basically the start of the offseason. I thought if Shohei Ohtani's not going to be traded during the offseason, if Mike Trout's not going to be traded during the offseason, then you wait until the deadline. If the Angels are as uncompetitive as they are probably going to be this year by the trade deadline, and Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout are both still wearing Angels uniforms after the final out of the 2023 World Series. They are going to, in every sense of the word, hold out until they get traded. They are not going to report to any activities. They're not going to do anything until they get traded. And look, Mike Trout and baseball was, baseball is dead. They were talking about this. Carabas and Dallas Braden and Joey, they were talking about basically what if Mike Trout's just a guy who doesn't necessarily want to, what if his burning desire isn't to win a World Series? He has a lot of years left in his contract, a lot of money left on that contract. It's a really tough one to move. He's financially set for life. His family's financially set for life. They don't have to worry about that. They get to live in Southern California part of the year. They get to, live basically wherever they want. They don't have to worry about basically anything financially for decades, right? Assuming their money is managed correctly. They don't have to worry about that. And that might be front of mind almost more so than winning. Now, of course, every ball player who ever suits up ever wants to win a championship. They want to win a World Series. It's a tough contract to move because it's a lot of money over a long period of time. Now, Mike Trout's a Hall of Famer, so every team is going to be bending over backwards if they can afford that contract. That said, Shohei Ohtani is a different animal because he's on a 1-year deal. He signed the highest value arbitration avoiding deal of any player in Major League history at $30 million. The market for Ohtani this offseason, assuming he, of course, doesn't stay an Angel, which none of us expect him to do so, is going to be ballistic. I mean, we're talking easily a number that starts with a 5 for $500 million easily. So
but I think part of that, the contingency of that, though, is he needs to have a good year this year.
Yes, he needs another good year, which I don't think anyone really doubts.
The Angels, but if the Angels situation gets to a point where it affects the ball club, it could happen. I can't remember if it was his 2019 or his 2018, where by his standards, probably the worst of his career. It was 19. Probably 19 or 20 because he had to have TJ during one season, so he was only hitting, and then he tried to pitch in 2020 and just didn't really rehab properly, so they just shut him down pitching wise. Offensively was not great, and 2020 wasn't a great year for anyone really. But then in 21, offseason of 2020, he bulked up, worked a drive line. He put 2 and 2 together. He put the physical aspects with the baseball aspects. He was already really good at baseball, but he put the physical aspects down. He got right physically, and then he obviously just set record after record after record in 21, which was the most refreshing thing to hear. And obviously 21 was a great great year for multiple reasons, but we don't need to get into that until the NL preview. And I'm not rooting against him, but I would say that it's kind of like the Mariners. You got to prove it to me.
That's true.
You got to prove it to me that you're worth that contract in another team down the line. I think he is, but we have to wait for this season to really confirm it, because if he has a bad year this year, I think that will complicate things a smidge. I think people will still open up their checkbooks knowing that the Angels organization is not really safe right now, to put it in the word that first came to my head. So we'll have to see. But hey, there's Texas too.
Yeah, well, we know you to be a tough crowd, Reese, and that's a good segue into the Texas Rangers. You got to prove it to them, and signing a big contract is just not necessarily going to do it right away. You got to prove it, and I think there's no other player in Major League Baseball, specifically given his age, given his track record, more deserving of that label of you got to prove it to me before you justify that number, is none other than Jacob deGrom. Yeah. 5 years, $185 million with the Texas Rangers to be their guy, their ace in their bid to start a bit of a resurgence. You've got guys like Corey Seager and Marcus Semien on big contracts. Now you have the ace of all aces. You have Bruce Bochy as your manager. Now you got to go prove it. You got the pieces. You got the guy at the helm. You got to go prove it. And it doesn't feel like it. Like, look, I am a big Jacob deGrom guy. You know me. I've been a big fan of his, even though he was a Met for so many years. I love his game. I love his ability to just throw stupidly easy cheese since he
Hell of a
basically
pitcher
came up.
when he's healthy.
When he's healthy, unbelievable. One of the best in baseball, if not the best. But the when he's healthy part, it's so rare. It's so rare for him to have like even 2022, he missed significant time in the season, and just it's wild to me how good he can be when he's healthy. But again, that part has never been consistent for him. It's the when he's healthy part.
Certain stars in this league are also made out of glass. He is one of them. Buxton also comes to mind.
Buxton.
Let's see what notes that I have here. Oh, the big first one is, this is just another iteration of Texas spending all of the money. And if you know Texas Rangers history, you realize how well that went, considering that they have not won a World Series and that they've lost a World Series, 2 of them, in fact, in pretty brutal fashion. The Giants one wasn't as bad, but boy, 2011. Oh,
that was a tough year.
I'm not a Rangers fan at all. I have a soft spot for the Rangers, really for any team that hasn't won the World Series like the Mariners have, even though they are in the AL West. I wouldn't mind if they won it for once, just so they can shut up about it. But they're spending all the money. It hasn't worked in the past. It didn't work last year when they signed the $500 million left side, strong side. And that's my second note. Oh, but first I'll finish my... Nope, it's second note. Simeon and Seager have got to step it up.
Yeah.
They had pretty underwhelming years last year. And for the money they got, they got to get going.
Yeah.
With the paychecks that they got. So I'm excited for the influx of talent to go in, but like they just got to perform. And they just got to do it. And they have good young guys like Adolis Garcia. And oh my God, their pitching is now stacked. That's the thing I fear most out of Texas. Sure, we talked about how malleable DeGrom is, but you also got Eovaldi, picked him up. You spent all of the money to pick him up from Boston. I think they have probably the best 5-guy rotation in the league if everybody's healthy. And having that being in the AL West, that fills me with rage and terror. And then my third note, or I guess now it's my fourth note, teams got to stay healthy in order for all the pieces to work.
Yep.
Because other than the people that I've mentioned, and I guess Adolis Garcia,
it's a little, there are quite a few question marks with Texas. It's a lot of contingencies.
High risk, high reward.
Exactly. It's contingent on a lot of these guys being successful. Now, that said, on paper, they've got the pieces. They do have the pieces with the track record. Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney, I mean, I think that's probably more of a gamble than anything because he had one good year with the Dodgers. It was a great year at the Dodgers. Their pitching magic is second to none almost. I think the Rays are the only team with that claim to, the pitching magic. I think, and the Astros as well. But we'll talk about the Dodgers in our National League preview. But really, when it comes down to it, the bottom line for Texas is you gotta perform. You gotta show me what you're really made of. And this is the time for them to step up and be, show us that you're not just spending money like it's going out of style, And
I think the last note that I have here, obviously we have touched on Bruce Bochy. I'm not going to lie to you. My first impressions when I heard the announcement was, oh crap, another La Russa. Now, Bochy is not the same as La Russa at all. Like Tony La Russa, one of the greatest managers, if not the greatest manager of the game. I'm sorry, but his track record proves it. And if you exclude Chicago, I think it makes it, or his latest iteration of the White Sox, I think it still would hold true. This is not based on any fact whatsoever, but that was the feeling that I had. You're resurrecting a guy, a great manager. Fantastic results for the Giants. You're bringing out an old guy who has been out of baseball for a little bit. Not too long, but he's been out of baseball. I just thought this was more of for the publicity than having it be the right fit for the team. Given it, Chris Woodward, no. That was not your manager.
No.
That was not your manager. He was
not
organizational patsy. Sorry, Chris, not your fault. It's the organization, not me. They just gotta perform. That's
they do.
They just gotta prove their spending was a good idea.
Yeah. I mean,
unlike Oakland, who didn't do that.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of notes on Oakland, honestly, because the outlook with the A's has kind of been the same for the last few years. I mean, as a Braves fan, I'm very thankful that Oakland was willing to part with Matt Olson and Sean Murphy specifically. But with the A's, it's one of the things where you know exactly where their heads are at as far as how to run the organization. And the idea is to rebuild for the future. Now, the location of the A's is going to be a touchy one for the next couple of years until they can figure out what to do with the ballpark. There's still a giant uncertainty as to where they're going to play, if they're going to get a new ballpark, where the ballpark would be, if it's going to be in Vegas or in Oakland. It's a huge, I mean, talking to some of my friends from Oakland, it's a huge kind of question mark just up in the air between the city of Oakland and the A's, and there's a lot of back and forth on it. I hope they stay in Oakland because I think Oakland, when they're good, is a great baseball location. It's just a great place to have a playoff game. The atmosphere is electric at A's games when they're in the playoffs. When people are not at the Coliseum, it's less than desirable. The Coliseum is not an ideal stadium, which is why the Raiders left. There's a lot of pieces that go into this. I will say a bright side for any diehard Oakland A's fans, Shintaro Fujinami, or Fuji, the young Japanese sensation. Mount Fuji. Dude throws gas. He's absolutely electric when he has command of his pitches. And I think could be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, I like watching A's broadcasts specifically just because of Glenn Kuiper and Glenn Kuiper and Dallas Braden specifically. Not Glenn. I think it's Glenn Kuiper. No, it's he's Kuiper's brother or Kuiper's cousin. He is a Kuiper.
Like Kuiper's Giants.
Yeah.
Kuiper and Kruko.
Yeah. But one of the Kuipers is the A's broadcaster. It's I can't remember if it's Glenn Kuiper. I always get mixed up on this one, but we're gonna. They do
have one of the better broadcasting. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, so I watch a lot of A's games because of that, but there's not a ton of Glenn Kuiper. So I wouldn't say there's a ton of great incentive to watch the A's. Yeah, correct. There we go. We can do this. We can do this whole podcast thing here at Brews and Baseball, episode 7.
Baseball, a boys club? No.
No. But no, Fuji should be fun to watch this year. A's broadcast fun to watch because Dallas Braden is a character and a half. And if you're on Twitter, follow Dallas Braden. If you're a baseball person, he is one of the best follows on baseball Twitter by far. So the A's podcast guy. Should be fun to watch Fuji pitch this year, assuming he pitches the usual 30-ish starts. AL Central, Reese.
Just a darn tootin' minute here. I need to say some things about the Oakland Athletics that you have not touched on, sir. So I promise I'll be brief. So look, I mentioned a little bit before that Texas, Oakland, and LA are in some circle of hell. Oakland is kind of in a despair sort of hell right now. We've talked about the whole stadium thing, the team just being abysmal. I think the team is going to be tanked to move, which would be very disappointing for me because Oakland to me is the last of the old time team of baseball. Like Brooklyn, where neighborhoods could have their teams.
Right.
And when the neighborhoods got their teams and they're good, they will go to the ballpark and they will support their team. And speaking of the Coliseum and the ballpark, one of my favorite ballparks to go to.
No,
I said it. I love the ballpark. I grew up on the Kingdome. I love crap stadiums. It's just more baseball to me than the really nice facilities that they've got going now. I've nothing against it. Not Safeco, T-Mobile now is a jewel box ballpark. It looks real nice, and I enjoy the experience there. But boy, there was nothing like the Kingdome. It was crap, and the field was crap, and the roof tiles would fall and all that kind of stuff, and there's pee everywhere. But like, look, it was our spot. And I felt the same way when I went into the Coliseum. I was like, wow, this is an old ballpark with character. It's grimy in the good baseball kind of way. I know I'm probably the only person that thinks this way within a 1,000-mile radius. But it would really be too bad if they move. I'd be shocked if they moved to Vegas because their AAA team was so successful there, and I think that would just screw them up completely. They just built a new ballpark, which is comparable to the major league stadiums for that AAA team. So that would be the only time where I'd be like, ooh, that'd be tough. Unless if they played in Henderson, which would be a horrible idea in my opinion, because that means people would have to commute to it.
Yeah.
But then the last thing I'll say about Oakland, then we can move to Central. All of the pickups that they had besides Fuji are all north of 30. What are you doing? If you're going to lock down and rebuild a team, which is why I don't think they are. I think they're tanking on purpose. You wouldn't pick up people like Diaz and Trevor May.
No, they're rebuilding.
You would put your stock on the young guys. You would keep Sean Murphy. I think he was probably the only reason that people would tune in to watch. Laureano was a good player, but he's fallen off. Tony Kemp was big when he first came in the league. He's fallen off.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the situation of the hell of Oakland.
Yeah, it's a messy scenario for sure.
But anyway, that's all I have to say for Oakland. Let's go to the Central.
Yeah. So we have
we'll have a lot to talk about in the Central.
Well, it's funny. Okay, we'll start with the Guardians because I actually don't have a lot to say on the Guardians as far as like big name acquisitions. I mean, they didn't get better, they didn't get worse. They have just kind of stayed where they're at, and where they're at is really good. I mean, they won the division last year. I think Willie, my good friend, was pretty pessimistic about them to start the season, and they end up winning the division. I kind of just looked at him when they did, and I was like, so how you feel now, Will? But it's one of those things where they just have a really solid ball club, really well run. They know how to. They would like to not have to work on a budget, but they work on a budget. They work on a budget really well. And I think they're primed for another good year this year. Stephen Kwan was a really nice surprise last year, just from a baseball perspective. Kind of a throwback kind of player who just puts the bat on the ball and finds a hole somewhere. That's something that doesn't get noticed a lot in today's game. There's a lot of swing and miss, a lot of strikeouts, a lot of homers, but a lot of swing and miss, a lot of strikeouts. The Guardians had a massive power shortage last year. They hit a minuscule amount of home runs, but they still made it to the playoffs, and they still won the division.
I was about to say, my first note is they're kings of the AL Central by default last year.
Yeah.
And what I will say about the Guardians, like you said, that they weren't hitting all that many home runs. It's why they picked up Josh Bell. It's why they picked up Mike Zunino, Mariners legend, Mike Zunino.
Mariners legend.
And their infield, I'd say their infield, pound for pound, is probably one of the better infields in it. You have Josh Bell at first, Jimenez at second. Why am I blanking on the shortstop?
Ahmed Rosario.
Rosario, thank you. And you have Ramirez at third. Jose Ramirez. I think.
Yeah,
I think that's a sexy infield.
I gotta say,
it's not $500 million.
Yeah, I gotta say, as far as a budget infield, they may have fleeced the Mets on their infield. I mean, they got the return for Lindor was Jimenez, who almost won a batting title, and Ahmed Rosario, who's a very, very solid. I mean, he's not as good as Lindor, obviously, but he's a very, very good player. So 2 for the price of 1 for one Francisco Lindor, who's going to command that kind of money on the free agent market anyway. Yep. And then you've got Jose Ramirez, who's your franchise cornerstone at third. And then if he can't even play first regularly, you get Josh Naylor as your DH, who Josh Naylor is certifiably insane in the best possible way. I mean, the dude's headbutting guys with helmets on after hitting 2 home runs in the 9th inning or later. Like, he had 1 in the 9th and 1 in the 11th for a total of like 6 RBIs. That was absolutely insane. So there's definitely, there's reason for some optimism for another good year in Cleveland. Obviously, the pitching is ridiculous with Bieber and McQuincy.
That was my third note.
Tristan McKenzie. Yeah. And then at the back end of the bullpen, a regular on the Boba Poppy Diamond Dynasty squad, Emmanuel Clase, owner of the unbelievably unhittable 102-mile-an-hour cutter. I still don't know how that pitch is physically possible to throw, but here we are.
Well, and I was going to say, even throwing in Shane Biebs and Plesac in there, I think their last years weren't as good by their standards, but 2 names that I recognize and that I would happily have on my ball club as starting pitchers. We'll see if they can repeat. I think the only people that'll come close to them are the Twins.
Really? And not the White Sox?
No. And I will tell you why once we get to the White Sox, because there are a lot of developments there that I think are going to derail things.
Okay, well, where do you want to start between the White Sox and the Twins?
Let's just go to the White Sox.
Let's go to the White Sox then. Yeah. So what's
my first note for the White Sox? Thank God La Russa is gone.
Yeah. I think they're just as happy as you are that he's gone.
Like I said, one of the greatest manager, if not the greatest manager in baseball history. I would say he's pretty comfortably the greatest manager in baseball history by world championships. But there comes a time and a place where you just have to hang up the boots, and he waited a little bit too long, I think. And also, I think he was a little bit too much in touch with the old form of the game, which can have its benefits, but I think the way he was implementing it wasn't as effective. Well, obviously you saw it wasn't that effective, and that's why they went with somebody else. But I think one of the main reasons he got the job, he's a drinking buddy with Reinsdorf, who's the owner of the White Sox. I have a soft spot for the White Sox. I loved me Hawk Harrelson when he was probably my favorite announcer to listen to, besides obviously Niehaus and Riz, Kipe and Kruk, and Carey was when he was still in Chicago with the Cubs. Sorry, Braves. But Skip was my guy for Atlanta, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
Not to say that Chip was bad. Chip used to be with the Mariners, and I loved him when he was with the Mariners. He was there for 1 year, I think, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm out of here," which is fine. That's fair. It's the first thing I wrote after La Russa is like, I mean, sure, Benintendi. Considering the rest of the lineup, I don't think that it was a piece, but it's not all the pieces you need.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that is going, and Abreu is out too.
Yeah.
Obviously, they got rid of him. But I think what is really going to deck him now is pitching. Clevenger's out. Whether he's guilty or not, he has been accused of domestic violence. We're not going to go into that because we don't know the details, nor are we experts on that particular field to where we can discuss it at length. But that is the terms of what is happening right now. And given the social climate that we live in today, whether he's guilty or not, he will not play for the White Sox again. I think we've seen the same thing with Trevor Bauer. So he will not be a White Sox. Hendricks will be out because he is battling cancer.
I will say on Clevenger, I don't think the commissioner's office is pursuing any sort of suspension. I don't know what the specifics are legally, so I won't speculate on that. But basically, dude is a less than great human being, and I hope he does not pitch in any game of consequence, basically for the rest of his career. So, I mean, unless whatever the charges are,
doubt he will.
Unless whatever the charges are found to be completely nonsense, and it is literally a once in a, like, 1 in a billion case of a complete and total fabrication. But from what it sounds like, doesn't sound like it's something that was. It sounds like a dude decided to behave in a way that is not becoming of any human being. So goodbye.
I just don't think in the social climate that we have, our personal opinions aside, I just don't see him playing for the White Sox again. He might be in the Major League Baseball again, but I doubt for the White Sox. And my last note for the White Sox is, Lord God, please free Timmy Anderson. I don't know what's happening over in Chicago. Chicago has never been a hotbed of fantastic teams, at least for the White Sox. 05 was kind of a fluke when they won the World Series, even though they had great pieces, and they've had great pieces over the years. Frank Thomas, Bo Jackson, you name it. Hawk Harrelson was essentially the best player on that ball club, and he was in the booth. Mark Burley, Joe Creedy, Konerko, just naming some names off of the top of my head, but I just don't think with the pieces that they've lost and their lack of replacing the hitting that they lost, I just don't think they'll be able to go up against Cleveland and Minnesota. But hey, they could prove me wrong. And also there's the trade deadlines in the middle of the season to where Jerry might open up his pocketbook and might make it happen. I doubt it. That's not a very Reinsdorf thing to do. But or at least in this day and age, I can't remember him spending a chunk on anybody recently.
Yeah, I mean, this was Benintendi's deal was one of the bigger deals for the White Sox in recent history. So I mean, it's and the AAV is only 15 million, which by today's standards is not a whole lot, but we'll see what comes of it, if anything. I just know the narrative in the last couple of years with Chicago, with the White Sox, was that it was their division to lose. I mean, Cleveland was rebuilding. You didn't really expect much from Detroit or Kansas City, and so Minnesota was the only other big player, and they had been inconsistent in the last few years. So now that narrative is kind of flipped on its head. Now it kind of seems like it's Cleveland's to lose. You did
yes.
You did tee us up for Minnesota, so yes, you did tee us up for Minnesota, so we'll get into that right now. So the big headlining move in the offseason was definitely trading Luis Arraez to Miami for Pablo Lopez, Jose Salas, Byron Churio, and obviously the Marlins get Arraez. I was initially very blown away by this trade because I was like, why would you trade a batting champ? And then I took a look at it, took a step back, and I went, no, the Twins were not one piece away from, they were not one hitter away from being elite. They needed pitching, and they needed it really, really badly. They got Pablo Lopez, who's a good pitcher, and I'm glad the Braves don't have to face him several times a year, because I think he struck out like 8 or 9 in a row, or 8 out of 9 to start a game in 2021. And I was like, well, the Braves strike out a lot, but even still, this is absurd. He's a solid pitcher, but he's a mid kind of 3.5 ERA guy. He's not going to give you maybe 160 to 180 innings. He'll be quality for sure, but it's not like, oh my God, look at who we got. We got Pablo Lopez,
Yeah. And another reason that I was touching on top of that, obviously you mentioned Pablo Lopez, but you come with prospects. My third note with Minnesota, and I think what's going to help them, especially down the line, they might not contend this year, even though they, I think, have a bunch of pieces to do so. The team is one of the younger ones in the league, with those younger players being reasonable pieces. With that being said, the biggest question marks for me is that Correa and Buxton have got to be healthy.
Yep.
Because if they lose one, if not both, two pretty big holes right there. And especially for the kerfuffle that was the Correa extravaganza. First being picked up, I think it was the Giants first that got him.
Yep.
Failed that physical, went to the Mets, failed that physical. Now had to go crawl back to Minnesota, who was like, yeah, sure, we'll take you back. We ain't going to pay you as much as you want because you were going to leave us, dick.
Yeah.
It's Buxton is made out of glass. Correa, whatever's going on, I think it's his knee.
It was like an ankle injury that he had surgery on before he was even in the big leagues. Like, he was a minor leaguer, and it never, like, I guess they didn't love how it healed, because it makes sense.
They mantled his ankle.
Yeah. it makes sense from a long-term perspective. Like if you're locking a guy up for 13 years, which was the initial offer from the Giants, if you're locking a guy up for 13 years, you want to leave no stone unturned on that physical because you are carrying 13 years of liability on your roster. That is a lot of money. That's a lot of time. You want to be thorough with that. And they didn't love what they saw, so they said, no, we're done. Same thing happened with the Mets.
They didn't want to have like a Reds and Ken Griffey Jr. sort of situation. I think to this day, he is still the 6th highest on the Reds payroll, and he hasn't played in 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
Close to 15 years. So what a time. What a time to be alive in Cincinnati. I will say, though, their pickups of Christian Vasquez and Joey Gallo, not bad offensive pickups. And especially coupled with the pitching pickups that they got. I thought all the moves that they did, even getting Correa at the final hour, I was like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. High risk for Correa and Buxton, but when you put all of those pieces together and with the young kind of ball club that you have, like I said, if maybe not this year, maybe next year, or if they find a better deal with Correa and they repair his ankle and trade him away so they can get better pieces down the line.
Yeah, and the gamble with Correa and Buxton is always going to be worth it because those are, when they are healthy, we're not talking about good, we're not talking about great, we're talking about elite. Like first team all MLB elite. When they're healthy, that is how good they can be. And we've talked about Correa as part of the shortstop class. That was one of the first episodes we did.
Ad nauseum.
He's for sure one of the most outstanding shortstops in the game of baseball. One of the most outstanding players in the game of baseball. So it's not a stretch to say that he can be the caliber that we're suggesting. The only issue with the AL Central, Reese, is that these are kind of the only two teams with any sort of talent in that caliber besides, these two in Cleveland. Because you look at Detroit and Kansas City, and this is no disrespect.
I've got some notes on the both of them if you want me to take that. Yeah. I'm ready to go.
I want to give a note on Kansas City. One note on Kansas City, and that's it. Just one note on Kansas City. Vinny Pasquantino.
Yep.
That's my only note on Kansas City. It just makes sense.
Hey, we love a Vinny. You know what I'm saying?
Vinny Pasquantino. It's the dude's
star
hilarious.
Of Team Italy himself, Vinny Pasquantino.
He's hilarious on Twitter. He's a star of Team Italy. He's just everything about Vinny Pasquantino makes sense. This is a Vinny Pasquantino appreciation episode. Okay, what's your notes on the Royals?
So I don't have too much for the Royals. I mainly saved that for the Tigers. But my second note after Pasquantino was Aroldis Chapman. Why? Seriously, I looked at their roster and I didn't say anything else of why. I also looked at the ages of the people in the roster in that ball club. They're not young. Sally Perez is 33. And I would say with his type of build and the position that he plays at, we're not looking at a lot more years of productivity, I don't think, unless if they transition him to first base. But even then, we'll see.
Yeah.
The only notable name besides that is Greinke, and he's more cooked than an overcooked Thanksgiving turkey. Like, he's pretty much done. This is his swan song. I think Kansas City is along the lines of tanking as well as Oakland, see if they can kind of rebuild things. But they got to stop picking up people like Aroldis freaking Chapman. I just don't think he's going to get a lot of opportunities to close out games in Kansas City, outside of Kansas City. They have no offensive pieces. Sally Perez, that's all they got.
Just another kind of nonsensical move from the Royals. And like, look, when they were in the World Series back-to-back years, 2014 and 15, I was all in on them winning the World Series because I love the team that they had, what they put together. They had a great team. They played fun baseball to watch objectively. And it was just a good time for the sport to have a team that historically had not been good in my childhood, for sure. And going back to the last time they won the World Series in 1985, at the time, it was refreshing to see that. And it's kind of, it's the opposite now. It's depressing to see a team that won the World Series as recently as 2015 be kind of this, non-competitive, basically. They don't look like they're going to be at all competitive in 2023.
Not at all. But hey, it could be one of those things where they completely prove us wrong, but I highly doubt it. I'll get to the Tigers, and then we'll move past whatever this division is. Wink. First note for the Tigers. Welp, they're the Tigers. That's Miguel Cabrera, the highest paid player at 40.
Yep, his last season.
Great. Top 6 players in their salary are all above 30. Not great. I know some people are saying, why does Alavila still have a job? I can't provide the answers for that either. And even the pickups that they got, my last note for them was, okay, Michael Lorenzen and Tucker Barnhart, I guess.
Wait, I thought Barnhart went to the Cubs.
Let me look, because I looked at the contracts things today. And even then, it's just like, okay, cool. You picked up Lorenzen.
Yeah, he used to play for
many that you need.
He's formerly with the Tigers. Now he's with the Cubs now.
Okay, yeah, great. Perfect.
So Michael Lorenzen is basically the standout pickup for the Tigers.
They needed a lot more pieces than that.
Yeah, they need a few pieces to really get to where they want to go.
Baez needs to step it up. Miggy, look, he's doing his swan song. I get it. Not a lifelong Tiger, but pretty close. He was with the Marlins beforehand. That's pretty much all I got with the Tigers. Another kind of legacy of failure. I mean, look, I think the only reason that the Tigers had those success years in the 2000s was because Mike Ilitch, who was the owner at that time and was the owner of Little Caesars Pizza, he kind of had like three spirits visited him in the night and was like, oh, the Red Wings have won lots of titles. Let's see if the Tigers can do that. And he tried his best. Now he got 2 titles out of it, I think, before he passed away. But that was just because he spent all of the money. And I don't think the Tigers are doing that right now. Maybe they're veering towards a tank situation, but like, they're big players. Javi Baez just hasn't performed. Skewball was hurt last year a lot of the time. Hopefully he comes back and maybe provides some pitching. This is the wrong word because he's a starter, but pitching relief. So we'll see. We'll see about the Tigers.
A lot of question marks. Spencer Torkelson, excuse my French.
Yeah, he's young.
Spencer Torkelson was supposed to come up in 22 and make a big impact in the league. He didn't do that. I forgot to mention Bobby Witt Jr. as well with the Royals. I think he is a lone bright spot with them. He's still very young and has a lot of developing to do. Playing for Team USA in the WBC, so that's a big step forward. I know he's thrilled with that. But again, it just doesn't it's one that you want to see more before you're ready to really pass judgment on. I think that's why it didn't come to mind immediately. Torkelson is where we really need to see more on him because he struggled at the major league level in 22. So he's gotta show something worth hanging on to if you're a Tigers fan for 23. But we've talked about 2 divisions that are pretty, top heavy and with the rest of the pack kind of just there. The AL East is not one of those divisions. This is, I think, going to be one of the hardest, if not the hardest division in baseball. I think the NL East is really the only other division that's going to have this level of competition throughout 1 through 5. We'll start with the defending.
What a shocker that is, that the East teams are the ones that figured it out.
Yeah, big shocker. Big shocker. We'll start with the Yankees. We'll start with the Yankees because they're the defending division titles and they command all the storylines. We talked about Aaron Judge at the top of the show. Obviously, Judge is now the captain of the Yankees, first captain they've had since Derek Jeter. That's a huge deal because
that was my first note. I think that was the most important thing they could have done.
Yeah,
the New York would have rioted if he went to the Giants.
Yeah. Arson Judge, as John Heyman initially reported.
York Giants at that.
Yeah, true. So for those who weren't as aware initially in the offseason, John Heyman tweeted that arson judge, obviously huge typo. John Heyman does that a lot, but he's a busy guy. I can respect the typo gang. The typo
His brother arson.
His brother arson. Yeah. So Judge initially was reported to sign with the Giants by John Heyman. That was false. He ended up signing with the Yankees 9 years, $360 million. That's what Judge was kind of looking for. It'll keep him in New York basically for the rest of his career. It'll also make him the captain of the New York Yankees. He is the leader, the face of the franchise. We already knew that, but now that he's captain, it puts him on a Jeter-esque, not saying he is the next Jeter, but Jeter-esque level of just burden. And this, you carry the burden of being the captain of one of the most notable sports brands in the world. I mean, you talk big brands in sports, you're talking Yankees, Cowboys, I don't know who it is for football, but like Packers or Steelers or Patriots or whatever. In soccer, it's Real Madrid, Barcelona. You're talking the elite of the elite. What's that?
Saudi Arabia,
right? He is a symbol for the New York Yankees. He is their leader. So he needs to have another big year on top of his MVP campaign in 2022, which we all think is deserved. I was a big Shohei guy, but I think he deserved it. I was very much in the camp.
Especially after losing 17, I think he needed this one.
Yeah, and I think I don't know how many times I said this. You and I talked about it, but I was very much if Ohtani wins it, he deserves it. If Judge wins it, he deserves it. Neither one of them would have been undeserving of an MVP. One guy would just have been more deserving than the other. And I think that guy in 22 was Judge. So, you know, he earned it. He earned the contract, earned the payday. He bet on himself, which is a huge BDE move, and it paid off. And you gotta respect it. He bet on himself, and he just went bananas all season, just out of his mind all year. And it was so much fun to watch from a neutral perspective. As much as I don't really like the Yankees, you love to see just excellence at the highest level, and that's what Aaron Judge was in 22. The only problem with the Yankees in 22 was that was basically it. I mean, Judge was the New York Yankees in 2022. Garrett Cole gave you Garrett Cole. I mean, he's being paid $33 million a year. I think it's the AAV is like 33 or 35. I don't know. It's a lot. But Garrett Cole is giving you Garrett Cole. Aaron Judge was being just an MVP all year. But then outside of that, from just a holistic perspective, you weren't getting a ton of production up and down. I mean, Trevino won the Platinum Glove, sure. Nestor Cortez was filthy. Clay Holmes was amazing before he went down injured. That kind of sucked. Michael King was really good for the Yankees out of the bullpen when he went down injured. So a lot of question marks. But then in the offseason, Steinbrenner goes to Brian Cashman, gives him a lot of money, and he signs Carlos Rodon. That is a bigger deal than I think we're talking about, because now the Yankees have a 1-2 punch to complement Garrett Cole. That was one of the pieces they had been missing. It makes them a better team. Does it make them better than Houston? I don't know. I can't say. I would lean towards no, because it feels like they're more than just those pieces away, but it makes them a better team for sure.
Look, I think the difference between Houston and New York is New York can spend, Houston can develop and spend. Obviously, you have Peraza coming up, but that's probably the only name where I was like, yeah, that is a one and true Yankee. You obviously have Jason Dominguez down the line, who is going to make some impact, but gotta wait for Dominguez. Let me go to my notes here. We talked about Judge. I thought that was very important, because who's going to lead the Yankees if he left? Cole? Stanton? Nuh-uh, I don't think so. All of the top players on their payroll are north of 30. That seems very typical Yankees. Spend to get your talent. I get that. That's kind of their MO, but still something to at least keep an eye on. Peraza will probably be the only one to even that out if he becomes the starting shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll find out. My third note, and this was really funny, it's like, well, yeah, Rodon could be good, and he's injured. Already will miss the first part of the season. Not long yet, but, you know, it's just not a good sign when you sign with a new organization, and this is something that happens. But
yeah, not great.
That's beside the point. The pieces they lost Benintendi, Tyone, Carpenter. I thought that was okay. I think with the exception of Tyone, maybe a little bit of Carp, mids. And to make cap space for that one extra piece that they would need down the line, somebody like Canely from the Dodgers, I picked him up. We'll see what he can do.
Yep, former Yankee, so he's going back. So
yeah, we'll have to see about the Yankees. I think you hit the nail on the head with Aaron Judge being the Yankees. I don't think there's enough consistent production across the board for me to confidently say, oh yeah, deep run again for sure.
Yeah.
But time will tell.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
And
it'll have to depend, I think, on Aaron Judge's year as well.
Yep.
And becoming the captain is sure, it's great for the positives and the perks, but you gotta back it up, son.
Yep.
And I think that he will. But things happen. It's baseball.
Yeah, I think I'll have a good year. Not as good as this past season, but we've been wrong before. But I think it's a lot of weight of expectation to carry that he wasn't really carrying in this year. It's one of those things where you're a genius if it works, and you're considered a bit of a laughingstock if it doesn't. I think he'll live up to it. He's been a Yankee long enough where he knows what it takes to perform at that level. He's done it. He did it at a historic pace last year. I don't see why this year has to be any different.
Well, and also you have to remember that they signed him for 9 years. That tail end of the deal might not be so great, but they kind of had to do it. Because like I said, I think the Yankee fan base would have rioted if he left. And with that being said, the amount of pressure that is put on just at the offset amplifies it astronomically, being in the New York market with the New York fan base, just with the New York Post.
Yeah.
And the New York Post is just ruthless out there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes way over the top. And, it can get to a player if you let it get to you.
Yep.
So we'll see. I'm rooting for him, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's a TBD kind of thing. I think it'll go probably the way we expect it to go, as in it'll be the additions will work. To what extent, we will find out, but I think the fact that this division is so deep makes it interesting for this year. I want to talk about the other side of the coin with the Yankees, and that's the Red Sox.
Boston.
I want to talk about the Red Sox briefly because I know this is going to be a longer episode than you're used to hearing. But the New York Yankees, arch rivals, arch nemesis, winner of 4 World Series since 2018, were nothing short of mid in 2022. A lot of things went wrong for the Sox in 22. A lot of issues with the team. Rafi Devers got locked down long term though in the offseason. Justin Turner brought over. Adam Duvall. Xander Bogaerts is gone. But the team has some pieces to have some level of success in 2023. But it is a vastly different Red Sox team from 2018, 2013, especially. But you look at some of the guys that they've locked up either long term. Since I put my notes together, Justin Turner had signed. That was new the last time I'd taken a look at these notes. Adam Duvall, 1 year, $12 million. Braves legend Kenley Jansen. Dodgers legend Kenley Jansen. Former Red Sox Kenley Jansen, 2 years, $32 million. Masataka Yoshida, 5 years, $90 million from the Japanese League. Of course, you mentioned Devers, 11 years, $331 million to stay with the Sox. Talk about a city that would have rioted had Bogaerts and Devers both not been locked down long term. There would have been riots in the Haba and the Ad.
It's 11 years is tough. I think with Devers, I don't know if he'll last that long, but they had to do it. It's kind of just one of the eventualities of today's game. My notes on Boston, and you'll love this. What a year last year. I only can think about the pop-up in center field that the fielder just didn't see.
Yeah.
I think that's summed up the entire Red Sox season in a nutshell. Story getting injured, obviously, that sucked. I hope that he has a good year this year, especially since he was free from the hell that was the Rockies franchise.
Yep.
Bogart, we're talking 2018, or I'm looping in 2018 with this. Bogarts, Martinez, gone. Those are, two big old pieces that you had. I'm glad you mentioned Masataka Yoshida. Big Japanese player in the league. I think he'll hit well. We'll see how he translates to the game. I think, back in the days when there weren't as many international players coming over, especially from Asia, I could be off base here, but I think generally a lot of people kind of mistrusted these players coming over. Oh, they won't translate to this league. The baseball is different. It's kind of like European players when they went to the NBA. There's just arbitrary reasons of why they couldn't perform in the big ol' American league. I think he's going to go to work. And I'll be very excited to see his contributions to the team. Considering all the people that have left this year, you pick up Duvall, I think, was an all right choice. You pick up Kenley Jansen and Justin Turner, and I was kind of just like, that ain't going to do it for me. I don't know what their cash situation is like, or what their reserves are, particularly at shortstop down the line. I hope they got somebody good to replace Bogarts at short, because that is a huge hole that you did not fill. Also, Kenley Jansen being paid $15 million a year, or 16, excuse me.
Yeah, for a closer who has to redo his mechanics in light of baseball's new enforcement of the balk rule, that's a huge one. Justin Turner and Adam Duvall are on the back ends of their careers. I mean, same with Kenley.
I just didn't think that was the right moves.
Yeah.
To replace the pieces that they lost. And, we got to have Verdugo and Kike step up more to the plate.
Yeah. And I think the plan...
Verdugo was played a lot with being with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And he hasn't translated it in his time with Boston.
Right. I think the plan is for Kike to play short, and for plan is for Kike to play short until Trevor Story is healthy. Whenever he gets healthy, I don't know if he's going to be out for the whole year, or
Trevor
at least
Story is short.
Yeah, Trevor Story would be short, but I think he's still hurt to start the year. But Kike is going to play short. Duran's going to play center, Verdugo and right, and some combination of Duvall and Yoshida in left, or maybe Duvall just DH, or Yoshida DH. I don't know. The scouting report on Yoshida is a lot of oppo power, a lot of oppo, so a lot of peppering off the monster, which I think is going to play.
That might be good.
I think that's part of the reason they liked him so much, because he's just going to play pepper with the monster. That said, translating over from the Japanese league is not as straightforward as you'd think. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani did it really, really well, and that's not one we're concerned about, but it's still a question mark. And that first month or two of the season is going to be really indicative, I think, of how the rest of the season will play out. Who knows? Maybe he'll have a really bad first couple months and then just go to work in the second part of the season. Or he'll have a great first month and then pitchers will make adjustments, and then he ends up being, a shell of himself, and, still a decent player, but maybe not worth the money they paid for him, for sure. But a lot of really strange moves that I think maybe by the advanced analytics look really good, but ultimately the games are played on paper. And, again, I mentioned this earlier, but there's a reason that Alex Cora is such a good manager, because he has a really good feel for the game and he understands the analytics side of it. And that, I think, is an underrated skill to have in today's day and age, when every front office being driven by analytics, where you need to be able to understand it as a manager at a minimum. How much you then distill to your players is up to you. He's obviously done a really good job of doing all of that and distilling that to his players. So, we'll kind of see how it plays out in the next couple months for sure to start the year, because there's so many new faces in Boston that it's kind of hard to keep up with everyone.
Alex Cora, I think the most important thing that you didn't mention of why he's a great manager is because he's figured out the black magic secret to get caught cheating multiple times and not be exiled from baseball. Because Carlos Beltran, where's he been? And I doubt that he had as big of a role in the cheating part as Alex Cora did. Now that's speculation at worst. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if
I think we still need to read Evan Drelich's book on we talked about it recently, but we need to read that book. I really want to read that book. Maybe I'll start tonight. Who knows?
I just wish I could read, All right, which which LA East team we got next?
Yeah, let's talk Blue Jays, because I think the Blue Jays are one that I've been on the Blue Jays pretty much since Vladdy came up. But I mean, since that core of youngsters with major league lineage came up. So at the time, it was Vladdy, Bo Bichette, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and Kevin Biggio. It's turned into Vladdy and Bo Bichette, really. Kevin Biggio's kind of been a fringe player. Gurriel got traded to the Diamondbacks as part of a huge deal for the Blue Jays to get Dalton Varsho to make their outfield even better. He's probably going to be the everyday center fielder, and then we'll have George Springer and right. Dalton Varsho is also stupidly athletic, where the dude is a catcher by trade who can also play center field, which is just bizarre to me. But that's the legend of Dalton Varsho. So he'll be the center fielder from what I've read anyway. He'll be center field, Springer and right. And then in left, who are they going to put in left? I guess Biggio or because Tapio's with Boston now.
I'd have Biggio in left, and yeah, I think that's the only person I can think of that would be comparable to me.
Yeah, but either way,
we'll see. He might pick up if you shake him up in a new position. He might wake up and learn how to play again.
Yeah,
we'll have to see.
But either way, I think they're primed for another good season. They have John Schneider with his first full year at the helm. Charlie Montoya was obviously fired for I can't remember how far was it into the season. I think it was like mid-June. John Schneider took over. They started playing well. Yeah, okay, so about halfway. Now he gets a full year under his belt. We'll see what he can do with that locker room, with that clubhouse, with that team. A lot of talent. They got Chris Bassett. Obviously, we talked about Dalton Varsho. They got Chad Green as well in a 2-year deal. So former Yankee, good, solid reliever, just coming off Tommy John or a long-term injury. I can't remember if it was Tommy John, but a lot of potential for that team to be really good. Chad Green?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that we've touched on most of the notes, and I was a little bit biased for the Mariners here. My first note was thanks for Teoscar. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Dalton Varsho for me was a really big pickup because my note after that was Belt, Kiermaier, and Green. Excuse me, not Chad Green, just Belt and Kiermaier. Sure.
Yeah.
Kiermaier, great defensive, could be in that left field slot, but he's got to be healthy.
Yeah, maybe he'll play center.
I would rather put Biggio out there if I'm completely honest. I think Kiermaier's on the tail end of his productivity years. I'm not sure if I really appreciated the deal. And of course, Brandon Belt, we'll see.
Yeah, same kind of deal.
Kind of the tail end of his thing. And then my last note for them is please continue to choke in the playoffs for me. Please and thank you. Oh, and I can't pronounce his name, but the last name is Ryu.
Shunjin Ryu?
I think he's got to have a bounce back year because he has a no trade clause. And just from the Toronto Blue Jays perspective, that sucked because his last year wasn't great. I think Kikuchi has got to back up a little bit. He hasn't had the productive year like he had with the Mariners. I was still kind of mad that we let him go. But considering who we have now, I will not say a word.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't even know if he was still with the team after how much time he's missed. But
he might be gone. But I'm trying to remember all of the players off the top of my head. So.
Yeah, from what I'm seeing, it seems like it's a question mark to begin with. So, but either way, if he's able to pitch this year, I think he's well liked in the clubhouse just for the kind of guy he is. And he seems like a fun guy. But I mean. That said, they do have the pieces to be really good, as we saw in 2022. So 23 is, we'll see if it's more the same of 2022, just without losing to the Mariners in the first round. Go M's. But we'll see with the Blue Jays. Again, I like watching them just objectively. Also, Dan Schulman is one of my favorite play-by-play guys, so I'll watch Blue Jays broadcasts. Not the biggest Buck Martinez guy, but I get it. Like he's well liked, and there's no reason not to like him. He's just not my personal favorite color commentator.
We all know your personal favorite is Keith Hernandez. So
oh yes, clearly it has to be Keith Hernandez, specifically Keith Hernandez and only Keith Hernandez. Can't wait to talk about
flirting with Miss Met on an SNY Met video, and it was the most cringy thing I could ever watch because he clearly didn't want to do it.
No chance.
Whereas he's just kind of like,
No chance. Not a chance. He did that willingly. Two more teams. We'll get to these last two teams pretty quickly because we've exhausted the vast majority of our notes. I think a lot of it was centered on the Mariners and the Angels, just for obvious reasons. That's a lot of our favorite players and storylines. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Baltimore Orioles, who were almost the biggest surprise team of 2022, almost making the playoffs. Which I know almost doesn't really mean a whole lot, but in the context of where we thought the Orioles were going to be at in 2022, my God, this was a huge year for them. And I expect 23 to be another step in the right direction, maybe not that significant. They traded Jorge Lopez, which was bizarre to me, but, you know, I
thought it was the perfect trade.
It makes sense.
I thought
it'll make sense long term.
You got to understand... they have a great core of young players right now that they're making to look a punch. Rutschman is coming into his own. Obviously, you have Cedric Mullins, Mountcastle, just to name a couple. Obviously, you know, losing Trey Mancini and Jorge Lopez, that was tough. I mean, it was a tough pill to swallow, but I think all things considered, they made the right choice. They traded him at their highest trade value. Maybe not Mancini as much, but because he was more of a face of the franchise and they just had an opportunity and went with it, maybe to bolster their core up a little bit, especially on the younger side. And my last note with them is like, I think even the Orioles organization announced it's like, yeah, we're looking to push to contend. And my immediate reaction was, okay, you sure? It's surprising. They made a surprising run last year, but can lightning strike twice? I'm not sure, especially when you lose a big cornerstone like Mancini and essentially your entire pitching in Lopez, you know? So we'll see. Baltimore is my favorite team in that division. I have a soft spot for the Orioles. They've had a legacy of failure like the Mariners have had for a long time. Time for them to get theirs, as long as they don't beat the Mariners in the process.
Well, they'll have former Mariner Adam Frazier on the team this year on an $8 million deal for just 1 year. That'll be interesting. Gunnar Henderson, when he comes up, when he comes up from the minors for an extended period, watch him. I think he's probably gonna. I mean, he came up last year. I don't know for how long, but he was in the majors for a little bit. He had his first couple hits. He should be around. Adley Rutschman is quietly turning into one of the best catchers, and he's only been in the league for 4 or 5 months, which is weird to say. Yeah. But when you look at a lot of the metrics, a lot of the WAR metrics, and a lot of the advanced analytics, really like Adley Rutschman. And yeah, he's a little older than most players when they debut. I think he was like 23 or 24, but it's still. That he's a great ball player. I think he's a really good personality too. Like I think he could very slowly become one of the key faces in the sport, and I want him to because he seems like a really fun guy for the game of baseball to have as like your face of the game. Just seems like a really likable dude. So Orioles, sneaky, probably not going to win the division, but sneaky this year. I would not ever count. If one of the other 4 teams in the division has to go to Baltimore late in the year for a shot to win the division or to make the playoffs, I would not sleep on the Orioles. I wouldn't say we're gonna just walk over them. I agree. So you got to be careful with that team. Finally, to round up our 2023 American League preview, we have the Tampa Bay Rays. We talked about them earlier. Management is simultaneously a strength and a weakness for the Orioles this year and pretty much every year. It's a team that I don't think we've seen it in the kind of Moneyball era where a team is managed effectively by the front office through a manager. I mean, this probably happens more than we realize, but I mean, Game 6 of the World Series in 2020 is one that comes to mind instantly, is one that it's like, that's the front office. That's not Kevin Cash. That's the front office saying, if a pitcher's third time through the order, yank him. Blake Snell was throwing a gem of all gems in the World Series in 2020, and he gets yanked because of his pitch count and his time through the order. And we're just sitting at home just like, what do you, he's thrown 76 pitches and he's one hit the Dodgers. The Dodgers, they won like 43 games out of 60 in 2020.
I think the front office was looking at the WBC rules instead of Major League Baseball rules at the time. They were like, "Oh, it's after 65 pitches. Well, 76. That's 9. That's too many.
That's way too many pitches. He's got to be. You've got to 11. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. Okay. I was gonna say the only things I want to note for the Rays. They traded away our Lord and Savior, my close personal friend, G-Man Choi. And by that, I mean just one of my favorite players.
We'll see. He might go crawling back after his very, very productive meetings with the Pirates so far.
Not off to a great start with the Pirates, which is not great for the G-Man.
A different hell organization.
Oh, Lord. Can't wait to get to that preview. Free Brian Reynolds much.
Yeah, that's going to be my first note is free Brian Reynolds.
Yeah.
Love the stadium, though.
Beautiful, gorgeous stadium. For some reason, I noticed this too. Yeah, I noticed this too in like late in the season.
PNC, sorry.
Yeah. Late in for whatever reason, Pittsburgh start their games at 6:30 instead of 7. And I'm just like,
makes sense.
Why? I mean, you're Eastern time, but like, what? Why? I mean, it makes sense. I get it, and I personally would enjoy it. Maybe. Actually,
Especially during weekday games, I'd rather start at 6:30. I know it's going to be tough getting off of work and stuff like that, but
yeah,
on a work/school night, and with how long the games last, you don't want to be out till 11 because sure, the game might end at, let's say to be conservative, 9.
Yeah.
9:30. It's going to end at 9:30 if it's a 6:30 start. You got to get out of Pittsburgh. And it's kind of in the downtown, and it's right next to a river, so that takes out a lot of the entryways to get in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Tampa Bizet.
Yeah.
A lot of big pieces are gone. Obviously, Kiermaier, Kluber, Zunino, all gone. But I will say, with those pieces missing, it's a young team with some pop. They got a Rosarena, Wander Franco, Brandon Lowe, or Lau, or Limbus, for those of us playing the DVD home game. And they didn't pick up a lot of people, which I thought was interesting, because obviously I'd say they're the most Moneyball of Moneyball leagues, or teams, I should say, especially in this day and age. But it's one of those where you can't really have a judgment towards the team because they always seem to pull it out in the end. They're always contenders. If they miss, it's not by far, or at least in recent years.
Yep.
So Tampa Bay is kind of the only team where I was like, all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say.
Yeah. They re-signed Fairbanks and Jeffrey Springs, and they signed their largest contract in Rays history, largest free agent contract in Rays history this offseason to Zach Eflin, formerly of the Phillies. 3 years, $40 million is the largest deal to a free agent.
But even then, in terms of the pickup, I was like, yeah, but like, it's not a big bombastic player like I was expecting, which is very Rays at the same time. So who knows? Really,
it's well within the expectations for the Tampa Bay Rays to pick up a guy like Zach Eflin on a deal like that. Wander Franco, I just wrote this down as a note. Wander Franco has the largest contract of any player with less than 1 year of Major League service. He signed an 11-year, $182 million contract to stay with the Rays.
Boy, hope that goes well.
Less than a year of Major League service, and he signs that deal, which is wild. But
you can see where I was at with Julio.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. And it
God forbid he becomes a Kyle Lewis. It's Julio, you're watching this right now, I can tell. If you become a freaking Kyle Lewis, I swear to everything holy, I will burn things. It'll be things that won't get me in jail. Maybe something small, like a piece of paper within the confines of my own house with safety gear and goggles and firefighters standing by. But I will do something drastic.
Drastic, he says.
Do not become a Kyle Lewis. I haven't done a single like Davy Jones thing, even though I've got this hat on.
Which sounds like a...
Afraid to get wet. Tell me, Julio Rodriguez. Do you fear Kyle Lewis?
No, that's it. That's the one. That's how we wrap.
That's how we wrap right there. My rating doesn't change. Let's take him home, buddy.
No, you're standing at 40. I'm standing at 47 out of 63 Georgia peaches for Amelia's Finest Peach Saison from Trustworthy Brewing Company. I would say a decent entry. Not a beer that we typically would drink a lot of. Peach Saisons and Saisons in general are not our expertise. That's not our forte. We're not by any means seasoned veterans when it comes to consuming these. However, we drank one. We finished it on the episode. Yeah. We gave it, I think, a pretty honest rating for both of ours. Not our favorites, but it could be worse, honestly. I've had worse beer than this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I drank it. You see it gone.
Yeah.
It gone.
So. He gone. Much like us in a couple seconds. Folks, just want to remind you, if you are not already subscribed to us here on the YouTube channel, then what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. It's free. It helps us out a lot. It helps us do what we do on a consistent basis, gives us that positive feedback to keep doing what we're doing, create a lot of the content, both on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and a lot of the marketing stuff throughout the week. So be sure to tune into that. And then also our socials, Brews and Baseball Official on social media. TikTok and Instagram are your main two. On Twitter, you can find us as well, Boba_Poppy and Ringlish, however you want to say it, RHYNGLISH. I spelled it.
There are options. Is my name Rice, sir? Is my name freaking Rice? I am either the Rice Man or I am Reese. And when you put the RHY with the glish at the end, or sorry, English, it becomes Ringlish.
Ringlish.
If you ever disrespect me like this again, I will send Vladdy out here. Uncle Vladdy, not very nice. And you think I'm talking about Putin? No, just Uncle Vladdy. Never had last name. Didn't keep track of it. Raised by bears and wolves.
Going to be raised by bears.
One empty bottle of Stolichnaya.
Oh my goodness.
Much like me.
Much. Love it.
All right, let's take them out before I say anything else.
All right, well, folks, that's our show. That's Brews and Baseball Podcast Edition, Episode 7. We will see you next week for Brews and Baseball Episode 60. A new brewery debuts next week. Be sure to stay tuned to all our socials to find that announcement on Monday. Until then, folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one. Until next time, we go!